Welcome to the first meeting of the Yurugu book discussion. Getting started, does anyone have any questions right off the bat? Having a hard time understanding the three new concepts we're being introduced to?
I have another person in, so maybe they can do a short intro, Jai.
Luther King. My family is from Los Angeles. We've been here about 150 years, almost. Originally, though, we came from the South. So I had two great-grandmothers that were slaves. One survived and bore the slaveholder 5 children. The other one was beaten to death. She would not submit to slavery. She was an Indian woman and they just beat her to death. So that knowing about genocide and understanding genocide is something that was raised in me. I know it. I know that there's a box, and I know that in order to break that box, you have to get inside and push it out. That's how it works. Knowing that means you need to understand how it works. So being educated in this world, however you're going about that education in order to achieve those goals, that's excellent. Because the more soldiers we have, the bigger army we have for change.
I see.
Saying that, one of the things, I mean, my mom was, a young woman, and I was a little girl. So for Martin and Malcolm, Malcolm felt an armed resistance, and as Americans, we have the right to bear arms. And Malcolm believed in peaceful protest. But the thing that got them both killed was not that they are, yes, that they're Black men, but Martin was going to make a speech the next day about financial equality. Martin was assassinated because of that. And Malcolm already was standing up and saying, we have the right to be just like you. We can bear arms, and you're just like me. I looked to my brother, and my brother was white. Remember when he made his trip to Mecca? That's what he said. So the fact that we stand and said, oh no, we are not only as good as you, but in many cases better than you. That's what takes us out every time. So I just wanted to say how much I appreciated Trey and Schwa for bringing those historic thoughts into play in different ways.
Thanks for that comment. Thanks for sharing that. Trey, I'd like to ask you guys a question. So she says, Dr. Ani says that the Asili is not meant to be changed. So what does this mean for the non-European collective if the seed of a culture is not meant to be changed, meaning that there's no way to stop the Europeans from attempting to dominate?
I think that it means that for non-white people, that oppression is supposed to be continuous and indefinite, and it's not supposed to change, at least under a system of white supremacy.
I think it means you can't reform the system.
Yeah, I was gonna say it. I think it's something that what Jair was saying is like infinite. Like when this was created, they had intentions for it to be infinite and this domination to be continuous. And I really do think they expect themselves to dominate other planets in the future. If they don't destroy this one before they go out, because I can go on and on, but I think it's a deep understanding that white supremacy is supposed to be infinite.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it was designed to be self-sustaining, and the only way around it, from what making of the text passage that you just read, is to create a new one altogether based off on a new model, basically, that's free from European thought.
Yeah, free from, I also want to add on to that, free from European thought, European influence. I think everything's, I think all of that, I think the whole European culture is, like, the dominant force of it is just really destructive and genocidal. So, like, complete separation, or like a complete overhaul, meaning like an overthrowing of the empire, something like
Definite.
that.
The only alternative to white supremacy is justice for all people. That's the only alternative that exists. I just don't know how to get there, and I'm sure we all don't know how to make that happen yet. But I had a conversation with my mother last night. I tried to invite her to this book club, and she kind of like, laughed it off a little bit, like she wasn't taking it that serious. But I kept trying to reinforce to her, like, it's very important to be educated about the things that go on, because there are things that you do that you don't even know why you do, and they're just symptoms of the source, and the source being white supremacy. Until the source is addressed, then the symptoms can't be like, treated like the right way.
Yeah.
I literally just invited my mom into the Sunday one for license papers, and I'm pretty sure she's gonna pop in. But I think it's like healing to involve our mothers in our learning and our unpacking of this really like so destroying, mind destroying entity that is racism, white supremacy.
Yeah, I was going to answer the question.
I'll try. I also took that to mean that the silly is so inherent to the system that any, like, similar to what Ash said, you can't reform it. So even if the current powers right now are saying that it's changing for the better, that's just lies so that the current system can keep existing, but it's still ingrained in that, like, original domination.
And whatever change they're talking about is only surface level anyway.
Yeah.
It's not real. It's all cosmetic, and it serves no value.
Yeah.
Yeah, even like Neely Fuller talks about how it's like a refinement. Is it Neely Fuller who talks about it's like a refinement stage? So it's not that things are getting better. It's just that like white supremacy is refining itself to make it seem like
and adapting.
Well, and adapting. Yeah.
Have you guys ever read or seen the play Annie, Get Your Gun? It's a story about a white woman who moves to Australia, and I don't know how many of you understand about the Aboriginal plight in Australia. It's a microcosm for us, so it's easy for me to compare. So basically, the Aboriginal peoples were colonized by prison colonies, because we all know Australia is made up of, Europe emptied their prisons into like Pennsylvania, a couple other states here, but a lot into Australia. So these prisoners went there and they made them into indentured servants who now is, most of the people are the children of them, great-grand, whatever. Anyway, the Aboriginal people there were two women. One wanted them to be Christian, the other one wanted them to be Christian, Annie, but as time went on, she realized that they actually had a pretty good answer and didn't need necessarily to be Christians. So they began to trust both of these women, and both of these women fought very hard for the Aboriginal people. So they gave all of their articles of I want to say spirit, I don't want to say worship, their articles of spirit and their ancient artifacts to Annie, and she kind of hid them for them. And this is true, you guys, like based on truth. So, and the other woman who was pushing really hard for them to be Christian, and at the end, they went through and took everything from the Aboriginal people. They became alcoholics, the same social disease that we are Native American, those of us who are Native American or part Native American or not, all of the people here who are disenfranchised, those same issues that we have, it happened there. As I said, it's a microcosm, it's easier to explain. So at the end of the story, there's these two women are standing there. Both of them fought for these people, and no matter what side they were on, they lost, similar to what they're talking about in this book, right? So now in the 70s, they basically went in, the Aboriginal people took over. They said, we want our stuff back. We've grown now. Now this white woman was the guardian of the stuff for them. She held for them. We want our stuff back. We want to take back over. We want to raise the people. We want to do this. So they did, and they had like a time of renaissance. But now things went bad again, and pretty much the white folks have taken over. So they took all the kids, they put them into like institutionalized schools, just like they did here. And they're back. They've stepped back. So I am resilient to say that we cannot change without, you know, anarchy. I'm just resilient to that because I know how much change we have achieved by working, going into the structure and slowly dismantling and pushing it out and forcing it to fit us. So that's kind of my thought on this, is that looking at Australia, it lends to what you're saying, that there's no way to change it without destroying it, without anarchy.
Let me
answer the question. So because the silly is not meant to be changed, I think it means that us as a Black collective and non-European collective as a whole has to come to the understanding that, like, just how the European is a global collective, you know, even if it comes under the guise of being called Israeli and the state of Israel, which is just like another European colony, just how America is a European colony as well as Australia, they're all still European colonies. So they understand that they're a collective and they are a collective meant to dominate. And we have to become a collective like meant to combat that in every area of people activity, all the 9 areas. Like this is what we have to do on the critical mass. We have to also get a critical mass of people like doing this, and also a critical mass of people calling out racism and white supremacy and using this terminology so the white supremacists have that option of ending racism and white supremacy or killing all non-white people, which, you know, is a very achievable goal in our lifetime. So that's what I think that it means, that the silly is not meant to be changed. We have to come up with a way to destroy it or combat it effectively. We can't like focus on relying on a European to change or develop a new pattern of behavior when they've been doing it since their origin, since their existence. You know, it's not something that could change overnight, it seems.
Yeah, can I jump in and read? I love how at the end of the pages, there's these texts, and I'm gonna say the word to my best knowledge, but it says, Bulukuja is a Yoruba term meaning "come on down, let's fight." And like when I read this, I just felt like this whole understanding this book and reading this book is really readying my mind and my body to like really unpack the like intense colonization of my own mind by the oppressor, and to like get further to like the fight of one reclaiming my own mind, and then the physical fight and the multiverse. Yeah,
I definitely agree. I feel like this book is like giving me fortitude. Like she literally starts off the intro saying like this is intentionally aggressive, like, and I loved that. I thought it was like it's like an assault, like, and I really liked reading that because it made me feel like, okay, like I'm ready for a battle. Like I really enjoy the way she writes.
And like all the visual aids to really allow me to contextualize, learn further her what she is trying to express and like hammer in. I love the glossary as well. I do want to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like Uta Moroho, like I received that as that's like the.
Oh, so you mean Utama Rojo?
Yeah,
Rojo?
Yeah, how would you define that, Swab? How would you define?
So
I would ask everyone how they would define that themselves.
Well, I would define the Utama Rojo as the logic, the thought patterns, and the behavior of the European, like how does that manifest into the reality? Whereas the Utama Wazo is like the pre-existence, is how they view the world subconsciously, and then because of how they view the world, they develop um because they view the world, they energy, which is their life force, represents that in the Utama Rojo. But Ash may be able to explain it differently if that wasn't a good example.
I think you switch them.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Like
well,
the two.
because I was about to say, oh, that's what I thought, but it was opposite.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The Utamawazo is like the thought that, like, it's the thought that is culturally structured, the things that you think because, and it's more intentional, and you think them because of like the society you exist in. It's the way, like the way that you speak. But the Utamaraho is like your almost like inherent reaction to things. See someone that's like homeless because of our society, your inherent reaction is not to feel like sympathy, it's to feel like almost like pity or disgust, or feeling like you're better than them because your utamaraho, because of the asili, is making you think of things hierarchically. So you're just thinking of this person as below me instead of this is someone that I should support. So I think that's like
I wanted to ask a question because I just now kind of got to the glossary part, and I kind of vaguely remember talking about this with Swab briefly a minute ago. But so I just maybe I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So the Sealy is like basically the source, right? The source of white supremacy, and then the Utsumawazo, am I pronouncing that correctly? That's the thought process, and then the Utsumaraho is the actions based on the thought. Okay, yeah. I just want to make sure I'm
well,
understanding.
it's not just the actions based on the thought too, because it's not just based on the thought, because the thought is more intentional. It's almost like a visceral reaction. Like it's
like how you're saying, like how people view homeless people as lesser or below, or in a disgusted way.
It's not like you're intentionally thinking that. It's the first thought that comes to you because of the asili being ingrained in you. I think. I don't know.
What do you think the Tumaraho? What can you like give me an example of a manifestation of that? Because I thought that the Atumawazo was the thought, and then the Tumaraho was the action, like that's affirmed by the thought. That's what I was thinking, but I feel like maybe I don't have the context correct, maybe, or I don't know. Am I missing something, or?
Yeah, I think that Utamawazo is the thought, but it's more of an intentional, like that one you're more aware of, if that makes sense. But the Utamaraho is more like almost like subconscious.
Like second nature, would you say?
Yeah.
So one is more intent and one is more reaction. Like one is more like with intent, and then one is more like just you're not even thinking about it. It's just subconscious to you. It's just something you're kind of doing like normally, like all the time.
That's my interpretation. I don't know what others are.
Does anybody else? I'm just kind of curious. I feel like I don't want to get too fixated on it, but I kind of.
I can add to that.
Go, Mary, definitely, please.
So, thank you. Yeah. So earlier today, while I was at work, I whipped out the laptop and I was like, yeah, I got my reading. I got a book club later, so I need to be reading. And I just started reading out loud Utamawazo, and I was with people who were from Zimbabwe, South Africa, and they were like, you need to like say this to one of basically I have another colleague who's Swahili. So I went back and I showed it to her, and she broke down Utamawazo and Utamaroho, but she didn't understand the first part of the Uta, but she said the Mawazo means heart. No, sorry. Mawazo means deep thoughts, like somebody who's like tapped into a deep thought, where she said that Roho means heart. So when I read the text of the Utama Rojo being a vital force of culture, it just, that term vital force and heart, for me, it went hand in hand.
Yeah, like it's like, you know, the energy, the spiritual energy that white people conjure up to commit their actions, you know, and that spiritual energy is a particular energy that seeks control and destruction. Is what I'm understanding the Otama Rojo to persist of. Otama Rojo being like their life spirit, right? Their spiritual, like, isn't that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think their Otama Wozo, which is their worldview, is how they justify their action. Well, yeah, but subconsciously, this is like on a grander,
Utama
yeah, on a grander scale, like the Stili is like getting all this and this continuous energy from like all this, from the Otama Wazo doing its thing, and also from the Otama Rojo doing its thing. It's like a force that's feeding from this energy.
I wanted to ask, does in a silly, does that include symbols?
Yeah, it's, yeah. It says that's the logos of a culture. That's logos and symbolism are definitely one and the same, no doubt about it.
The moment I read it, all I thought about is just all the projections of the symbols that they have conjured up that reveal their, like, I guess, true nature.
Yeah, like
you hit the nail right on the head for sure.
Yeah, like I discovered like the origin of the Zeus story, and I won't talk about it much. I'll send you guys the video so you guys can watch it and check it out on yourselves. But it's really troubling and troubling stuff to learn about, like their logos and what that means. And I'm sure this book will talk about that once we get to the area of like of sex, and how basically, like, for the European, like, sex and aggression is like the same thing, you know, like they experience that in the same way, whereas like non-Europeans are not like that, you know. So, we're gonna get there.
That link in the video. I mean, she jumped there.
Yeah, I'll send it.
You can put it in the WhatsApp, right? The WeChat, what I say? The WeChat?
Yeah,
I don't know.
please do it in the WhatsApp.
WhatsApp.
I'll put it in
What the fuck
WhatsApp.
did I say?
It's okay.
Sorry.
You don't have any more comments, questions?
My only comment would be like,
Mozo and Ute Morajo. Like, your definition was great.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I thought so too. Very good.
yeah, I feel like those terms for me, I'm gonna have to like definitely like play with those and keep going back to them.
Yeah.
Do you feel like in the book she's going to be doing a lot of that, kind of using like terms like that, and like kind of like terms with specific definitions, you know?
Well, like, I think, like, you know, it's really awesome that she created these two terms. And also, we're only in the introduction. I'm sure like chapter 1 is going to reinforce what they both mean, and she's going to give very clear examples and like context of, like, you know, how they're like separate yet supporting entities of one another. I'm sure we're going to talk about. I'm sure we're going to have a I'm sure we'll develop a very thorough understanding of these concepts.
Yeah, just like the ISIS papers, things just keep getting reiterated until it becomes second nature, so you can know it.
And I also think the reason why she writes in like one of our native languages is because it's part of the decolonization process. This is like a decolonize your mind. To me, it's a book where that's like kind of the intention. They wrote them with clear intentions, and they say that, and they're like really, this is how I say in their introduction a lot. You know, it's just really amazing.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how many things you aren't able to verbalize because we're like speaking English. It really shows the
Oh wow, that's a good point.
It's a very good point.
Really good point.
That is a good point.
Yeah, that's one of the downfalls of our previous like ancestral cultures, because they haven't had the language to describe how the European is like double tongued. It says something yet does another thing, you know. Actually, I'll read something that reinforces exactly what I just said that I highlighted. Let me find it. Okay,
Is it in the intro?
Yes, on page 11, yeah. So
Okay.
it says the lack of an aggressive ideology seems to be related to the lack of the perception of a threatening outside world, the inability to perceive other cultural groups as the enemy. So this is saying that our culture is like they're silly and how it's function. They have not had yet at least not developed like a awareness that other cultures could be like dangerous and contagious. Like a cultural disease to say. So yeah, they didn't have the language to be like, oh, these people are like like really, 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 really bad. And the way that they dominate is something unlike our nature. Therefore, we have like we don't know what's happening. Like so, that's something I wanted to share. Any thoughts, comments?
No, I think that's a great observation because it's true. It's hard. I started in another group that I'm in. We study like Hebrew and the ancient text of the Bible, and the same thing. The languages are so. Other language, just you can use one word.
You're breaking up really bad.
Yeah, slow motion.
Means so many different things. And
What Swan said on page 11, I was like, page 11? What's happening on page 11? Sorry, man, my bad. I just wanted to say
In
that.
the
Sorry.
spirit of forthcoming, I too have not completed the introduction.
Wow.
But I was very enticed by everything else that I did read, and I do have some questions and open conversations, so I can contribute. Just we'll be able to do it better the next time because I would have completed the introduction and the first chapter.
Well, next time we're not gonna do the whole first chapter. We're gonna do like half of it because the first chapter is pretty long.
Oh, thank God! I was gonna try and keep up, but I do think it's quite long. But
yeah,
it's good information.
I'm still immersed, but I just
Yeah, I know we're all still learning, but I just can't help it. I'm very grumpy.
I can assure you it won't happen again,
slave.
brother.
I'm not a happy slave. I'm a grumpy slave. Nothing happy about being a slave, white supremacy.
You can still be happy, man. It's still possible to be happy.
Yeah, happiness comes, naturally. You don't find happiness; it comes.
Or
okay. So are we gonna wait for Natalie to rejoin?
Grace, my friend, noticed it straight away, and she said that's something. She said that's something that she didn't know how to describe it. She said that there's no word for it in English to describe it, but she said that it was like, she said if you wake up in the morning and your grandfather is there, before you even brush your teeth, you'd address them, and that's a silly. She was like, it's just like a way, something you have to do, and you don't feel bad about doing it either. It's just like by way of nature. So she didn't use by way of nature, but that's how I would describe her sentencing.
I agree.
I think it's really I see the silly as a seed, and the silly is what that seed contains. It's the tamawazo and the tamaroho. It's like they're inside that seed, just flowing around, and then that seed grows into people and their culture. That's what I see it as. And as for who put the seed here, what the creator. Yeah, I don't know. But we have to
Nobody knows.
We have to deal with it for sure.
Nobody knows.
Okay.
So white people made it up.
Well, it's literally like a African word. So white people didn't make up the Sealy.
Not. I'm not talking about the word Sealy. I'm talking about the because you talking about we don't know who the one God is or whatever. Nobody knows. That's what I was commenting on. Not the word Sealy.
Anyone have any more questions or thoughts about the introduction?
Yeah, I
I
thought
haven't.
that. Oh, you can
Mhm.
go, Mary.
No, no, please. It's very trivial. I'll go after.
No,
Okay,
go
so
ahead.
you know the word like utamawazo and utamaroho. Just for me, I'm like a big fan of like anime and like Japanese culture, and I've always wanted to learn Japanese, and I find it like quite frustrating that I wanted to learn Japanese before I wanted to learn Swahili, a Central African language that is this more connecting. Like I feel it in my soul, like as I'm saying these words, the way it rolls off our tongue, there's like there's more energy to it. Like I don't get a headache as I'm reading, like how even though it was Dr. Francis Cress Wilson, I still had a headache from reading that, whereas don't get much of a headache from reading this. Is very energetic for me. And so learning words like this, it makes me compare and like want to idolize Swahili more than I do Japanese now. So that's good for my mind, I guess. It's like no culture envy. I can embed it in my own.
I wanna ask to piggyback off what you just said, Mary. I wonder why, because I wonder why people. I don't know if it's just a black person kind of thing or something that we all go through, but it's funny that you said that you wanted to learn Japanese before you learned any like African sort of language. And I wonder, do you think that's by design? Do you think like I wonder, is the fixation on other cultures rather than your own? I wonder, is that like inherent to non-white people, like generally? Like,
I have two answers for that. My first answer is what actually drew me to Japanese culture, and it's the fact that they love their culture enough to glorify it, make it extremely like in demand and popular, and it's just like you're just attracted to somebody who respects their culture, whereas white supremacy has made the African words, African sounds derogatory,
are devalued,
negative, not socially popular. So I guess like based on like what I'm seeing on TV, what I'm attracted to in media, especially of that age, Japanese is naturally going Japan is naturally where I wanted to affiliate myself, because they actually like thrive in their culture, whereas that's what we are trying to do now. That's what we are encouraging now, to the turning in of building on our culture, creating anime, creating stuff with words like utamawazu as opposed to uzumaki. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
I also
us embedding our culture
like,
will do that.
I wanted to also say that it's funny that you said that about like Japanese culture, showing a lot of respect to Japanese people, of course, right? But the way that anime or manga worked in like Japan, it was very underground. Then I feel like America saw a bubble where it could work, and then they were able to profit. Like Funimation, they localized a lot of Japanese shit, and then they brought it to America. There was money to be made in the popularity of this culture. But they'll do that with anything though. So I don't really know what like specific like export the African culture offers to white America to make a commodity. But I do fear that America will bastardize African people even further than they already have. Like right now, of course, it's not a good place to be in the world as a black person, but even black culture is becoming more and more like becoming more of a commodity. And I'm kind of afraid of that, because I don't know if you remember this year in 2020, Juneteenth, I've never seen so many people pay attention to Juneteenth in my life. Never. They just never have. It's always been something that's very important to the black like experience, but it's never got the proper attention. But now all of a sudden, I think it's going to continue to get this attention because white people know that they can like prey on the emotional attachment that black people have to the context of that holiday. The same way that American people can have turned Japanese culture into a commodity. I feel like the same thing is going to happen, like even further to black people. And I kind of just was drawing those comparisons. I feel like I kind of maybe lost the exact focus of what I was trying to say, but I hope that I was able to communicate what I meant to you.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
yeah.
I
a
just
lot of the
kinda...
things you.
Go ahead, Mary. Sorry.
Go
You go
ahead.
ahead, Mary. Okay. Well, I just kind of wanted to comment on like what you guys are saying about the language too, about like wanting to learn that kind of language. even traveling, like when you ask someone when they want to travel, no black person is ever talking about, most black people aren't talking about going to Africa. I think majority of black people are planning on taking trips to Europe or Japan. So I think that is also a part of that, about what we were talking about.
Well, I think that's a huge part of media representation as well. They paint Africa to be this place that you would never want to go. They make Africa look like nothing.
Yeah.
Like it's nothing happening. Like there's no modern cities or anything there worth value.
Exactly.
So you don't want to go there, but you want to go to Japan because they make Japan look so marvelous.
It's because I think also like their representation of their history too, because a lot of the history of Africa is mostly slavery. Most people, their history goes as far as slavery, and then it kind of just ends there. So
yeah, it's synonymous with that.
That's great there, you know. There's nothing great there to see there.
But that's media presence as well, right? You know what I'm saying? Like to fixate Africa on slavery, poverty, disease. These are the things they make you think about, like inherently. When you think about Africa, I mean, not now as an adult, like or with more education, but when I was a kid, when I thought of Africa, I was like, oh, people there are dying and it's terrible. And I don't want to. Why would I want to go there? Like, not realizing that I was literally speaking the nonsense that white supremacy had taught me. Like, not thinking like how asinine that is to say. That's so fucking dumb. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and we appreciate these other cultures more than our own because we've been taught to appreciate other cultures more than our own.
Even kind of when you're watching that documentary and seeing those images on the pyramids and stuff like that, like a lot of people don't know that kind of stuff's there, you know, and the media, like you said, isn't really showing us stuff like that. But lastly, before I finish, I just also wanted to comment on what you were talking about, culture kind of being a commodity. I think now, especially even kind of using Beyonce as an example, she's still kind of fishy to me. I'm not entirely sure about her, but her whole like Black is King, you know, like I enjoyed that. Like, it's
please stop. I'm sorry, bro. Please.
I enjoyed it, honestly, like the imagery, but I like honestly, it's like it's an invitation to come and like profit off of the culture.
Definitely. I talked about this already. Well, I think I talked to Swab about this, like,
to exploit culture. I don't think it's happening. It's just not happening. I think Black people have been commodified for a very long time. I think that the whole fact that when you think about Black films from like the early 20th century, they're called blaxploitation films. They're not even called movies. They're called blaxploitation. And it's in the title that these people are being exploited and they're Black. And I also think Black people are becoming like memeified, where the whole very essence of a Black person is like something of devalued, something that's like could be made a mockery.
I agree. Of
these symbols. So I think we have a lot of work to do because our cultural image is definitely have been guided towards
currently currently the Europeans have done a great job at destroying our culture. We have no cultural
access
culture right now, I would say, unless we develop a culture of counter white supremacy that can be a new culture. But currently, and also this is why I don't like talking about the entertainment area, people activity so much when we're talking about these books, because a lot of derailing happens. And
so it's so hard not to go off on a tangent talking about that.
I'm gonna are we able to understand the so far has this book been allowing you guys to understand the European mindset and this behavior more? Before you guys answer that question, I'm going to read this because someone maybe may have read it. But the content, this is on page 23, but the content of European nationalism becomes problematic because it implies imperialistic aggression, and because it is usually not recognized as the expression of group interests, thereby making it difficult for others to defend themselves against its effects. And a pertinent objective of this work, therefore, is to make the European nationalism recognizable as such. So, you might as well see white supremacy as nationalism, because whenever they're talking about preserving their so-called like nation, it's only like a white European nation or society. Like preserving their way of life is destruction of other people, destruction of black people especially. So, are you guys beginning to understand the European mindset is something just a part of their nature, and how they convinced us that to like call this out, because the European is subconsciously trained to like be individualistic, so they don't think they're all together. But when it all comes down to it, and it would be some kind of war, they definitely willing to fight, because they've been an entire life been given messages how to kill, why to kill, because black people are monsters, the cultural other. So are we understanding this mindset better because of this
Yeah.
work?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I also like on page 19 when she says they make it culture one, it's crimes, domestic tragedies, it's wars, civil wars. And I thought that was such a good line, because when you think about the fascination that we have with like World War I and World War II, and to like actually call those things, those are civil wars, like wars amongst white people, and like trying to like fight within each other to gain their own power. And like in those wars, a majority of like people who fought in them were like Vietnamese and like North African and stuff. So they were like fighting for the petty grievances of like these people within them, amongst themselves. I thought that was a really interesting line.
Yeah, and I think it's also like, when we just to add on to what you said, when white people are killing white people, it's a civil war. When non-white people are defending themselves from white invaders, it's called guerrilla warfare. It's like even
good observation.
The constant projection, the constant making your enemy non-human. It's 24/7.
Wow.
And we'll always see that manifest.
Yeah, and definitely the book has allowed me to see like more of the inherent aggressive nature of the European mind and the mind of those who classify themselves as white. So they were talking about how in order to sustain themselves, they don't try to develop things for themselves. Everything they need to survive, they take that from other places. So AKA like Africa, AKA all these other brown countries. And they always find a way to vilify their target and to make their target the reason, like, you are the reason why we are here. We are saviors, basically. And they conquer is in the theme of like saviorship. They're saviors. Yes, it is
bringing civilization to you heathens.
Literally heathens. Yeah, that's what the book says.
Can I respond to what you just said, Trey?
Yeah, you don't have to ask.
Okay, well, I didn't know if you were done, but so I actually had highlighted that same thing on 23, but I feel like now I'm getting it, that the fact that like part of European culture, the Asili, that if they make something so inherently, like it's under this veil that like respect everyone's cultures, but a part of their culture is inherently violent. And so it's more difficult to criticize that. And so like, for example, if like, a certain religious belief is like, doesn't believe like people should have access to abortion, even though that's like has a lot of political, socioeconomic and like effects, right? But to counter that it's like more difficult because they're saying it's like their inherent spirituality, that they have like it like some equal way to develop. Does that make sense? But that's how I interpreted like number 2, because they're not saying that their nationalism is imperialistic, then you can't just call it empire. It's harder to just be like, oh, this is just the way they are.
I mean, it makes sense to me. If I'm correct, you're saying that the way the way they oppress people, they try to make it invisible, basically. Like, because they'll really use scientific racism. They'll use philosophy. Yeah, they'll conquer the person's mind to sustain their oppression. Of course, they have like military weapons, which is also stated in the book. But European is an entity that has weapons and also understands that if you dominate their culture and then influence their mind through their culture, using their silly, you're able to like covertly run the world and then have people who talk about racism, white supremacy looking insane, looking like
absolutely
like all balls in the group, like,
absolutely.
To me, it's complete insanity to like be oppressed and not be able to talk about it. Like what?
Yeah.
People always say they don't want to hear that or something. Like, what do you mean you don't want to hear?
Or they say it just that's just how the world is. That's how humans always been. And that's totally like European thought, where the European projects this universality onto the world, but we're not all like trying to conquer and things like that. Like
that's strictly a European white folk behavior.
What would you say?
I want to ask an example in like life in society. So let's say somebody wants to become a psychologist or a psychiatrist. You need to be accredited by a certain foundation in London and everywhere in particular, but London also. And also the amount that you have to pay in order to just study it at a master's level is almost like 40K. If I'm sure for particular ones that are accredited, and it also is like it's like a snobbish society, and like certain demographics or certain people that are in certain classes will not attain such a wealth in order to get there in their lifetime, or it will take them a long time. So that's like an invisible way of dealing with the minority by making sure you keep them in that bracket so they don't basically get to that level.
Yeah, that's gatekeeping. They gatekeep. Yeah, all kind of information is hidden behind these invisible gates.
Yeah, but also also even breaking through these gates when we get into these institutions, they're there to refine and maintain racism, white supremacy. Like Dr. Amos and Wilson says that Black people they get educated, and sometimes the more educated they get, the more stupider they get, because we have Black people who become Black scientists, who design satellites, who go up and who shoot up into the air, going surveillance Africa, and who are now developing literal laser space weapons that are going to be able to shoot down literal Star Wars against African people who have no current defenses against this kind of technology. So we have Black people who are getting a lot of money and so-called education, going on to further our genocide.
Yeah, Carter G. Woodson talks about it in Miseducation of the Negro, and he talks about how he says Harvard has produced the dumbest Black people in the world or something like that.
Pretty much Black people go get educated and they don't come back and contribute anything worthwhile. All they do is kind of come back and reinforce that European idea of
yes,
this is how things are, and there's nothing.
Yeah, there's a word for that.
Uncle Tom.
No, upward social mobility. It's like a sociology term. Upward social mobility.
I think where you uppity Blacks
assimilate more. Where you assimilate more into the European culture, and you basically forget all about your own, and you also become self-hating. I've seen it happen so many times to people who become teachers because they're now with a middle class kind of social group. They start looking down on the poor people, their neighborhood, as opposed to seeing it as for what it is. They think it's an individual problem.
I feel like. Go ahead.
I was reading this book called "The Destruction of the Black Civilization." And it's within the European culture that when you educate yourself, one of the sacrifices that you make is your family. And then it's pretty common in French culture like for like Black people who do go to college in France, if they're from like lower economical statuses, they literally go to college and they have like, there's so many stories of them saying, now that I'm in school, I have no reason to speak to my family. We speak a different language now. Like I cannot go back there. Like I have need to communicate with my family, and they cut their families off for life. It seems like just after they've been educated. That's just one of the
terrible.
Okay.
European academia.
Yeah.
Oh, I wanted to say, I liked in the dedication part when she puts that about like for those Africans who would be seduced into the labyrinth of academia, like this book was written to free your minds. And I think it's really powerful to say that because especially for a lot of moms put that onto like Black children to like go to college and like that's the only way that you'll be free. And like they really push that on. It's like a big thing that's said in the Black community as like a tool for liberation, but it really isn't, and it's just a tool for upward mobility at best. Like
okay, yeah. So I want to read this. This is from 10. As he presents it, mythoform links the unconscious and the conscious expressions of culture in terms of consciousness. Then we could say that the cultural process is from mythoform to mythology to ideology. And I want to talk about our ancestors, Amos and Wilson again, because I've always hated Star Wars because I just subconsciously knew it was like not designed for me. I read Black people and like, but now he mentioned how like Star Wars there's like no Black people in it. I want to break it down even further. You know how in Star Wars they are dressed like old like old timey, but they have like all these future tech weapons and stuff. Have you guys ever realized that? It's like very like, just like Jesus time type stuff. Yet they have like weapons, like it's very futuristic though.
Yeah.
So which tells me that like the European subconscious like sees no future for Black people. And when they are in the future, happen to be in the future, if they've survived the genocide, they're still doing the same shit, hunting people for money or something. So I was like, wow, yeah. So
I see where you're going, but I disagree a little bit. But I do see your point of view.
I'm talking about the original Star Wars, not the new stuff, only the original Star Wars.
No, even then though, like I don't want to like go on a tangent about it, but I do see where you're coming from. Like,
okay,
but
Trey,
yeah.
I do think within Star Wars and within a lot of like just films in general, like whenever it's future based, there are either no black men, and if there are, they're like definitely in forms of servitude. I do think that's like by design. I do think they're like imagining a future without Black people primarily. Like, and I see that not only in films, also television series. Like there's
So, and even how like Star Wars starts is written like some kind of like legacy story, some kind of real mythology. So this is like, and this is a form of ideology. The ideology is like total domination of other planets, total bureaucracy, total like manipulation. So this is like
this is the direction we're going in.
So I think
agenda for sure.
Yeah, I've never thought about how sci-fi movies that are future-based have so few Black people. I thought that was just like Hollywood casting nonsense. I never thought that it was like some sort of secret program to say, hey, well, we don't envision a future where Black people even fucking exist.
I watched
roles.
I watched Guardians of the Galaxy yesterday, and there's so many white people, and to think that white people are only 10% of the world's population. How could there be this much white people on Earth and in space in the universe? Like, it just made no plausible sense. Like, but that's just the setup.
But that's just like that subconscious thing. I'm sure when they write these films, they don't even think about, maybe we should add some fucking Black people in this. They don't think about that. But.
Yeah, but when we understand the Utama Rojo and the Kamawazo and the Silly, everything is supposed to support each other, reinforce subconsciously or consciously. This is their entire culture is reinforcing, self-sustaining. So when an individual, one minor person happens to step out of line, it's never enough. This is why It's always, for
Let me-
people being
I
oppressed.
have a
Guys,
question.
I wanted to add to that.
I have a question
Sorry.
too. Yeah, sure.
But you can
Sorry.
go, Mary, because you're in response.
Yeah, I'm adding into what was said before. So when I feel like they don't directly show Black people, but they show Black people on a subconscious or symbolistic level. Like Gamora, I think she represents a Black person,
Definitely.
and they make it obvious. I feel who else? People who are blue shaded, the Predator with the locks, like all
Oh,
these.
yeah.
They
Oh, yeah.
show them in so many different ways. They show their fear of the cultural other in alien form.
Yeah, and then they show them dying.
Damn.
They
I
show
never
them being-
thought about. That's a good point, Mary.
The white entity.
Even
I
as
wanted-
that's crazy.
I wanted to read something on page 25 I think is really important. And it comes up earlier too when she talks about like how Black people are really and that our collective consciousness has been separated, and we get back to that. And I was wondering, this is like what she says about it. The most insidious expression of European nationalism is manifested in the process of codification, through which behavior and thought patterns have been standardized by validating theoretical formulations provided by European academia. That's something we were just talking about earlier. We need only to decode its working in order to understand the mechanism of supremacy and break its power. The objective of this study is to place the European experience under scrutiny in order to reveal its nature. We turn the tables by transforming subject into object, and in the process, we ourselves transformed into victors rather than victims. We emerge from the yoke of European conceptual modalities that have prevented us from the realization of the collective conscious will of our people. And then she goes on to list the objectives, and there's six. I mean, there's 5 objectives. I think it'd be really cool if we all read one.
Yeah,
cool?
I'm down. I'll start. To demonstrate our objectives are specifically to demonstrate the relationship between European thought, the nature of European institutions, European anti-Africanism, and European imperialism.
To remove the cloak of universalism from European choice, value, particularism, European interest, and Eurocentrism.
To examine and expose expressions of European nationalism.
It's on page 25 if anyone wants to jump in.
To understand the Sealy. To understand the Sealy, or fundamental germinating principle of European cultural development, and thus
to provide a tool for the explanation of European thought and behavior as part of a consistently patterned ideological construct.
And I thought it was a really important part of the book, because it's really good when an author lists their objectives so we can kind of get their intentions. And even from the introduction and the acknowledgments, I could kind of see that this was a pure book written by one of our. I'm not sure if she's still with us, but I just want to say her ancestor anyway.
She is.
Yeah. Awesome. Maybe we have her on the show one time.
Yeah.
That'll be lit.
Yeah, it's very possible. Very possible.
Man, what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on the objectives, and how do you feel? How does this resonate with y'all?
Oh yeah, I'm super excited. I've always been interested in the mind, because I've always had to this feeling that you have to be crazy for this stuff to happen, and why is the mind so messed up? Now I understand it's not the mind, it's the white mind, the European mind, that is the parasitic disease that has affected everyone. So I'm really, and it's the objective is a lot. It's a hard, complex task to really uncover and explain European behavior and European thought. and like there's so many areas to cover, and that's why the book is so long. It's gonna definitely be a journey, a powerful journey.
Mm.
Yeah, I agree. I really like the objectives. I feel like it's also really exciting because I feel like it gives me a lens to kind of focus the next chapters on. And I also like it because, well, I feel like it's like the know your enemy type thing. Like I watched this movie called The Dutchman. In the movie, this white woman, she acts like she knows everything about Black people, like their psychology, their mindset, and she like plays with the guy's mind. And I feel like we don't really know white people as much as we think we do, even though we like write memes about them and stuff like that. Like we don't really know them. And I think I really want to understand this to understand how to free myself and my mind. So I really like these objectives. I think, yeah, they're perfect.
Yeah. I just want to add more to what you just said. I definitely agree that white people in that movie, that was a projection of how they actually believe themselves to be, because they do perceive themselves to be these really intelligent, superior beings who are able to go to these lands and immediately be able to dissect people's cultures and then present it to them as needing their critiques and their modifications. So I do think that they do think they know everything about us, that they've studied us to a T. They do actually study us, and they've proven that in their examinations of our corpse, our organs, our DNA. If we all know Henrietta Lacks, how her cells are alive to this day in people's bodies, curing cancers. So understand the power of Blackness and how it's, what's that?
Yeah, to add to what you just said, there's a passage in the book. I can't find the passage in the book, but I wrote it down on my own notes when I was reading it earlier. And they say anthropology is not simply a child of imperialism. It is a manifestation of the European ethos. This is why very few anthropologists study themselves, i.e. their own cultural backgrounds. Their forced political superior position allows them to study others, but not to be studied. So that goes hand in hand with what you just explained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I highlighted that. I literally also highlighted that bit too. You just
Oh
read.
wow,
Yeah.
And it's just so like, look at how your European learns about a culture. It has to learn about it through discovering like ruins and like stolen arts and stolen structures. It has to study them after the destruction they caused. And also in the manner in which they do it, it's literally like grown men like wearing these little outfits, digging up stuff, and like with magnifying glasses. It's not a very childish way to study a culture. I think the best way to study a culture would be to to maybe try to like develop a way to communicate with the culture. But no, they don't study the culture that way. They like go in and like decimate it, exploit it.
They hand out Bibles and rape the women.
Yeah, of course, rape the man first, actually, then rape the woman, because that's what the European does. Like
that's fucking insanity.
All right.
Yeah, I like that too. And I like what Mary said, that like that passage, because that's what makes this text so aggressive, is that instead of us always being under the microscope and being like prodded and like observed, it's like now the European is, and it's a position that they've never been in. And you'll see like how defensive they get when you bring up like this is a part of your history, your culture.
Yeah.
It's really, yeah. I also wanted to ask a question because on chapter 17, I really like the line where she says, the utamaraho will be an indication of the kinds of activities that are pleasurable and desirable for the members of the culture. It will determine what they consider to be beautiful and to some extent how they move and speak. And I think that really goes into how like daily this stuff is ingrained in us, to the fact that like whatever we desire, the things that bring us joy, are also like white supremacist constructs. And so that's why I think like freeing ourselves is so much more than like what we think, because like, and I'm wondering like, what do you guys think like how pleasure and like desirability and beauty is like defined under white supremacy, and like how would you define it outside of that, if you can even?
Well, I can give an amazing example of that Utama Rojo manifesting, and how, white people, the Europeans, went to Africa and they saw like women who had not been like suffering in like cold mountains, so they have developed, more attractive bodies than the European Neanderthal slash women. So like they fashioned their clothes to look like African. So they had like those dresses that had like those big bottoms and whatnot. So that's like to them that's like the natural African body is beautiful to them, but they never had that. So they make clothes to subconsciously or consciously, represent that.
Yeah, and that's another layer. It's like so layered too because of the projection, because of like Sarah Bartman,
Yeah.
which is the woman that they had in like the zoo to show off her body, only to have those people walking into those zoos wearing outfits that resemble her body. It's so like
Didn't Kim Kardashian colonize like that a couple of years ago, her Paper magazine?
Yeah.
So it's just like the European Utama Rojo, it's always being reinforced. Like I don't want to talk about this entertainment, but like it's really important to talk about video games and how they reinforce. Like when I started playing StarCraft this game isn't about wars. This game is about reinforcing genocide. Like how can you develop like the best resources to commit a genocide against whatever race I'm fighting against? And when I had this mentality, I just started winning a lot more. So I'm like, yo, this is like, if I play the game where it's designed to be played, like, genocide the other race you're fighting, and you win. So it's just like, wow, that's the Tom Morale manifesting in the game called StarCraft 2.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I can't enjoy anything anymore, bro. Everything is racist as hell, bro. It's all terrible.
Also, like the
Fortnite's pretty good.
The Udamusa Corrado. How do you say it actually?
Utama Rojo.
Yeah, the
Utama Rojo.
Utama Rojo.
Yeah, perfect.
It manifests in a lot of European practices. Like to me, the fact that they have a thing called the art of war, like the art of killing, all these things, where people could go learn how to kill, and then how the European trains their children to kill.
Yeah.
And like in mass media culture, like a lot of the cinema that is produced is often a white European murdering non-white people. Like I don't have to name movies, but just to like people understand. Around, and the most recent film would be Extraction, where you have a white and Indian literally murdering.
Yeah, I just want to like, wow, what you said is really good, really amazing, actually.
Yeah.
And I just want to reinforce that, like the art of war, the European is like a warlike creature, it's a warlike entity, a warlike people, and the art is their Utama Wazo, the justification, of it, that's, but the war that's the Utama Rojo, that's like the
and I think
control and destruction.
I think too, when she talks about that pleasurable and desirable, like low-key, like video games, when you really think about it, it's super odd to like be playing games where you're just like killing people indiscriminately and just like enjoying, and that's like pleasurable downtime. And it's such a like white supremacist thing, low-key, sorry, but like like when I think about it, it's just like
how is this in the trash, just
like how is this a relaxation tool? But it's like that's what I was saying in that line, like, or even people who go to like shopping as therapy, like things like that are all ideas that are forced upon us, that we actually do, our brain chemistry actually makes it pleasurable for us. But it's also because we've been reinforced that this is like relaxing, this, when really it's like, it's pretty weird, pretty fucked up.
I was just thinking about this. This is just a little tad bit of what Average saying and what you said earlier about video games. But I was just thinking, I don't know, I've never played the game before in my life. And I was just sitting in my car and I started thinking about Counter-Strike. and how Counter-Strike is like special forces versus brown people. That's been for years, and that's like it was created, graphics not enhanced, and millions of people, mostly white people, are playing this game. Like
Still to this day, a dedicated fan base, very dedicated.
And, the Uda Marohu basically like how it manifests by consuming, expanding, and destroying. That is the mythology of European supremacy.
Yeah.
And like as a collective force, they believe themselves to be like superior. They believe themselves to be like absolutistic, meaning like the center of everything, and monolithic, like the support system for civilization.
Yeah, and also like, and absolute also like my rule is my rule. Like harsh criminal penalties, harsh prison, everything targeted to the other or to like the so-called like enemy is like such a harsh,
extreme. Everything's extreme.
It's like
law order.
It's like there's no like mediation. It's like, okay, I'm blowing you up now. That's
and like I think me and Swal were actually talking about it today. How like within this your white supremacist society, everything is seen as like combative. So like even driving, instead of it being like a cooperative thing where we all like work together, it's seen as like this thing where you're always on the defensive, waiting to potentially die like on the road because of like other people. It's like this whole distrust of everyone, because you're always assuming like everyone has the worst like intentions. And like I think it's also when people always talk about like not having the police, and everyone's like, well, what are you going to do with like rapists and murderers, etc. And it's like this idea that inherently everyone has this desire to just kill and rape people, and that's like, and I'm like, are you raping and killing people?
That's the furthest thing from my mind. I don't have those urges.
But we have to understand that is literally the European like nature. That's literally their nature to kill. Like they do this for fun. White people rape and kill for fun. Okay, we have to understand this.
And it goes to one of her objectives, which is like the whole universality of it, like making it seem like everyone does this when it's really just like white people do this. And I think that's like one of the first things we have to like get out of our language is this whole idea of like human nature. Like, no, it's like white nature or like,
Also, I just want to like, just so like the viewers who are watching this, like, and if people of color do happen to like engage in like any type of like devouring of human flesh, it's definitely in the context. Okay, these people are victims of like a white supremacy.
No doubt about it.
And they have been trained. This behavior has been trained to them.
Like through films and through music, there's so many like over the glorification and like the presentation of capitalism and all of their art shows that hey, this is actually being practiced by those who control these art forms and these medias, which are like
that just really like gave me like a thought of how like in European culture, the Utama Rojo, it has like done this. One of its practices is that it uses its subjects against each other, and like I think about a prominent church figure I know, and how like he's also a special education teacher, which has also been a huge detriment to and a part of the destruction of the Black youth. Because Black people have always been given a special education, because we have never been in this country to be free. We're in this country to be like subjects. So we've never, our education has always been special. So this special education is just another aspect of the European way of destroying us and getting us ready for a life of imprisonment. So we have a lot of Black teachers who are special education teachers, like unknowingly or knowingly perpetuating and like, participating in this behavior. So it's just another way to understand how there's war on Black people. It's war.
I wanna understand what you're saying, because I feel like I'm missing the point of what you're trying to say, but
okay, so I'm just saying I have okay, religion is not good for Black people. It's not good for
I agree. Yeah.
Christianity, especially. I just said I know a prominent church figure who is also a special education teacher. Two destructive things for Black people.
How is special education destructive? I'm because I maybe I'm not understanding what
Special
you mean.
education is just a construct, right? Like a lot of Black boys are in special education not because there's anything wrong with them, but because Europeans and like white people control what it means to be learned and what it means to sit for hours and like listen to someone, and like all of those things are white supremacist constructs. Like a lot of these kids are just kids or kids who are going through things. That doesn't mean that they need to be in a special education class that where they're separated and basically put in a class with a bunch of other Black kids who are supposed to be acting out. Like,
well, I don't
all
want
to. All of that are just like control mechanisms.
I have a personal experience where I could directly like speak on when I was. I went to a school called Paul Revere for the 7th grade, 8th grade, and the school was a white school in a white neighborhood, and I remember I was drawing in my English class. Like my grades were like decent, and I was a normal like student, a functioning student, and I was drawing in my like drawing book, and then the teacher, who's a white woman, saw my my drawing, and then like sent me to the office. And the next thing you know, I was just blood, and I was in a room with actual like special needs white students who had like real issues, and I was like literally these white kids were being taught how to read and pronounce words and letters. So I was definitely not where I was supposed to be, but because of my like the moment I wasn't conforming or doing what I was supposed to be doing as a Black boy in that European centric school, I was definitely punished and removed and separated and made to feel like something was wrong with me, like I was retarded, you know. Or like
I could see that being used as a tool of oppression, but I've been in school a long time. But when I was in school, kids who were in special education classes, they weren't there because they weren't like following directions. They were there because they needed to be. But I do understand the effect of
No, like if a kid has ADHD, like
not things like that. Not because they're not paying attention in class or something. I'm talking like real, like developmental disabilities. That's what I saw.
But that's what Trey's trying to say. They'll lump in Black kids for doing any little thing, for having extra energy, into groups of kids who need much more support and are much more behind.
So you're saying anybody who is kind of like breaking whatever they think the normal procedure is subject to be put into special education?
Not anybody, especially Black boys.
Yeah,
it's like a thing.
I think special education, like in its inception, is a good thing. Like there are people who do have disabilities and handicaps that prevent them from learning, but it's kind of turned into also this dumping ground for Black boys.
Yeah, like all of my cousins, like from all of my cousins, I have 3 cousins, 3 generations who have like been put in special education, and all who like are probably like we're functioning regularly, but because like the mom never fought it, or like just was a not very like a constructive mom at all.
Informed,
no, she wasn't a constructive mom at all. So like she allowed the system to do whatever the system wants to do with her children, like a lot of unfortunate victims of the system. So
because I mean, going to special education can actually be pretty damaging for somebody who doesn't need those.
I of course I agree with that 100%. It could,
and also it puts them like way behind in the terms of like wanting to achieve so-called higher education.
I get the point though. I'm not trying to argue against what you're saying. I think that is. I'm just saying in my life I've never. Not to devalue what you guys are saying though. I'm just saying.
I want to talk about these charts. You guys see the on page 17. The one I enjoy all of them. I love looking at this. because there's so many different examples. And I really like the inclusion of Christianity as a core mechanism of the European facility for the achievement of European world domination. And I was just talking to my mom today about, she was really like defensive about how like, I was talking about my Bible, I was talking about my Jesus, and I was like, I said, Mom, Jesus was real, he's a real person, but like the Bible you're reading, he's like when people speak of this person, they're envisioning what the collective consciousness is seeing. And the collective consciousness is seeing a blue-eyed, blonde-haired white person. And they've used that to dominate our ancestors and continue to dominate us today. And like you can totally have faith in whatever this thing is, but it's not productive. And I didn't go into detail to that nature, but I think this chart really breaks it down, and I want to list what it says when it goes to how they use religion to like kind of really use religion and pro-civilization to like control us. So for the first thing, it's patriarchal, and then nature becomes identified with sin, evil. So European, like this whole book is about us understanding the European mindset, not what European says about itself, but what scholars of other melanated scholars are saying about Europeans.
And the truth, the actual truth, reality.
Yeah, the reality which you live in, and maybe. I mean, this reality we live in can be just dictated and understood by just think about white people and people who classify themselves as white, and Europeans are the only people who have literally dropped a nuclear bomb on an entire country, and that's to me that's like and itself is genocidal because those effects are still being met by the people of like Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So they control nature. They're rationalistic, and they deny the spirit. And I think they deny the spirit because from the writings, I do believe that it's insinuating that they don't have a spirit, or it's just deeply suppressed. Something's off with that.
I think their spirit is just
the need for power.
Wants to control, wants to dominate.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, there's a line in here which talks about the Faustian soul image, which is like an agreement that like white people make to abandon his or her spiritual values and moral discipline to obtain knowledge and like control. I think it's there. It was there, but they've abandoned it. Or
what page is that? What page is that?
It's on page 16. Well, actually, I looked up because she writes Faustian. But yeah. I looked at what Faustian means.
I think a part of spirit is like feeling, that drive, and like you can't really maybe genocide a bunch of people if you like have any feelings. So maybe, and also rationalization. They like what they want to feel is like control, dominating people.
Yeah.
They've abandoned their like sympathy feeling, their guilt. They didn't even care about their children, like. What other race of people give their like children to be raised by their subjects? But white people don't care about their children. All right.
There's subjects who are supposed animals, right?
Yeah,
but like
raise their children.
What they want to do is dominate, and they have their like they always have their like rationalization card that they're gonna pull out.
Yeah.
Whatever they're doing.
They even put that at the beginning of the introduction, the part that I read. It said, the European has a grab bag of rationales for seizing the land and resources of other people in order to justify their domination. Yep. And to me, when I read that, I was like, that just means anything white people do, they'll always have something. They'll always have a reason for it. There will never be a time where white people do something and then they don't have an excuse. They'll always have some sort of excuse. And to them, it'll make sense. It'll always make sense to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to finish the breakdown. So like rationalistic denial of spirit, and then also there's a fear of blackness, whiteness, defined as good. This is all part of the silly, y'all. Identity identifies with the unnatural, and the European South as being like the center of everything. And Christianity leads to exploitation, destruction, and domination of the heathen. This is like the whole book in the most simplest form. Like these, to me, I went through right at these breakdowns. I like it's like a preview to what we're going to be learning and what we're going to be deeply investigating.
Yeah, I want to add on to those to the like expressions of the religion and how it's by its nature it is white supremacist and also hierarchical.
Yep.
Anti-nature. Very anti-nature. But so many other things, non-spiritual.
Yeah, I think Black people are nature, and that's why they have like a thing, like they really have a stick in their butts for us, you know. That's the only term I could. All right, that's why they're helping our annihilation.
Yeah.
Our total utmost destruction, you know, and eradication. Yeah.
I just wanted to comment on what you guys were kind of saying earlier. It's more of like something that I heard. I can't remember where I heard it from, but it was just kind of talking about how like white people are like the only group of people who like fight nature. You know, like with global warming, rather than like actually doing something about it, like about nature, they go around like spraying more chemicals into the air, you know, to fight global warming. And I just thought that's like pretty funny, like regarding what we're talking. Like it's just, I don't know, white people like whatever they do, whenever they're involved, it's no good. Just kind of comes up worse.
Yeah, and she talks a lot about like progress, and I think that's really fun. It's really interesting when you think about climate change, because their solution is always like, let's find another technology to like end climate change. Like I've done a lot of research, and a lot of the labs will be doing like all of this super extensive, like let's capture all the CO2 from the air, and like and it's just like all of that is going to require you to mine minerals, to do things that are further still exploiting the earth. And like, God forbid, we just like, you know, exist with nature and maybe just like not do the things that we're doing right now. But instead of that, their mind is so convinced of like, we must progress, we must get more technological, we have to do more, like we have to always move towards something instead of just being okay where you are and not always needing new technology.
Yeah, like that's pretty, that goes like with kind of cars now. Like I think they talk about like using Tesla as an example. I'm not for sure 100% about what I'm about to say, but from what I've heard is those batteries and like Tesla, like their cars are very like toxic for the environment. But you know they're considered very like progressive and like, oh, we're moving away from, you know, those fossil fuels and all the CO2 that the cars are expounding, but the new cars that they're coming out with are actually also very toxic, you know.
I think the ISIS papers has a chapter where she mentions cars and their symbolism, so that's going to be interesting to talk about.
Okay. And as mentioned, progressivism, like how it is essentially destructive, consuming, and expanding. That's what it is. Like all these like the Udamawazo and the Udamoroho, all these things could be examined in our everyday lives. How like there's always the continuation of something. Like America is at war with brown countries in the Middle East. America is currently occupying places in Africa, occupying places in Iran and Iraq, occupying places all over the world. The United Kingdom is occupying places in the Middle East. All these, and basically the European Union, the USSR, and America, all these places have like they're currently destroying, consuming, and expanding in these areas right now.
Yeah. So now we have like the international law, where like if countries like violate international law, it means that like the UN could like send troops to your country and like take it over or something. So like a lot of like countries are not trying to accept homosexuality the way that is being pushed onto them. So those countries could potentially be invaded by like by united forces, which is kind of bad, which is another way of white supremacy expanding and refining, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we kind of talked about it earlier, about the petty wars. I think I wanted to mention that, but you brought up the UN, and I read a book about Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana, and kind of how when he was fighting for independence, how white people specifically always wanted him to be involved in their wars. Like, I think at the time they were going through the Cold War, and he was trying to remain neutral. Like, I don't want to be involved in your white people shit. But for instance, the U.S. it was like, if you're not joining us, then you're joining the Russians, and the Russians were like, if you're not joining us, then you're joining the U.S. So it's like he didn't want anything to do with that, but they kept bringing him into it, and that's what like kind of ultimately caused his demise. Was the fact that he didn't want to choose a side, So I guess that's just more examples of white people trying to get non-white people involved in their bullshit.
Definitely. That's an extreme example too.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to watch a lot of documentaries about, like, I used to watch History Channel a lot, and they would always talk about America being like the greatest country, and like what even encompasses that, and it's totally just about power, having influence, controlling where all the resources are coming from, like controlling who, like, like controlling other people around the world. And like for a lot of people don't even care about that. Like a lot of people in America are like non-white, and that's not an issue for them. They're not, but like white people hold on to that so much, and that's why they love Trump so much. Is like he's this resurgence of like, we're going to control everyone again, when it's like, why is that even a goal you want? Why can't you just like not like just like live your life and don't fucking care what other people are doing,
Yeah.
It's so weird.
So-called conserve the rights, conserve their silly, conserve our way of life, which is dominating and expanding.
Speaking of domination and expansion, I remember, I can't remember exactly what I was watching, but it was something to do with the 9/11 attacks and how George Bush went to New York. George Bush Jr., obviously. He went to New York after the terrorist attacks happened. I'm sorry. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
George Bush is a great example of the European is silly. You don't have any questions? Are we all understanding the Utama Rojo and the Utama Wazo? Or do you all feel confident in our ability to understand it as we read the text? All right, great.
Yeah, I feel good about
I
it.
think so.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, I really like this book so far.
So I would advise you guys do the same, but I'm starting this thing where like I'm gonna be doing like 2-hour reading sessions. I'm gonna set a timer, some binary beats, some frequencies in the background, and just read, to read because if I can game for 2 hours, I can read for 2 hours. I can watch a 2-hour movie, I can read for 2 hours. Why not?
Binary beats is a great suggestion, actually.
Oh, yeah. So that's something I've been starting, and it's like. It's really lit because it's like 2 hours of just gaining knowledge and like healing.
Can you drop a link to one of the binaural beats?
Yeah, I'll put it all on WhatsApp and What's that?
Yeah, what is that?
I'll send my favorite one too.
Yeah, they're just
That
like
got me
certain,
through
just
uni.
certain like sounds, just certain freaking like waves of sound.
It's like lo-fi or something like.
No, maybe a scientist can explain it, but it's just like a form of music. For me, it's music because it's constructed for me. So it's just a form of music.
There's a scientist in the
It
meeting.
helps you retain information.
There's two scientists.
Oh, really?
None are helping though.
I'm an ex-scientist.
Briefly go back to what I was saying about if we have understanding of the Ultimo and the Ultimo Rojo. Utama
Rojo.
Utama Rojo.
Yeah.
You made me say it.
I get it. And Tama Wazo. But yeah, like
wow.
to me that
At least it's amongst ourselves.
Me that Utama Wazo is the kind of like the rationale, the mental governance, like this is why I'm gonna do this, and then it's more methodical, more planned, and it's more cognitive based. Like the city sets all this stuff to be manifested through culture, through symbols. Like I don't know who said it, but someone said like when you're able to like know how you're supposed to greet your grandpa before your teacher finale. And the Ultima, the Utama Rojo, Utama Rojo is more of the like survival mode. I'm like in airplane mode. I'm just kind of functioning as my innate self. More heart driven, basically, driven by the heart, because the word rojo does mean heart in Spanish for sure. I'm pretty sure.
And in Swahili.
Yeah, in Swahili, but not more importantly, but differently Swahili.
It just shows the connection of language.
Yeah, the heart. Yeah.
So I had one of my questions earlier, because Swa kind of mentioned it, was like the words. She's not making them up, because Mary did say they were Swahili. So
yeah. I picked that too.
The first parts of the word, the first part, Utama, I think that is already that exists, but she made up the other part. These are her concepts that she has created for us. This is literally her stuff. She just using. Yeah,
actually, so she created it then. She's creating the vocabulary.
Yep. I think I have that highlighted as well. Let me see if I can find it.
I think Sarah's saying she has to go.
Right here.
Bye, Sarah.
Yeah, she said, I have created the concept Utama Wazo to convey the idea of thought as determined by culture. And I have introduced Utama Rojo, slightly more difficult to explain, as the spirit life of a culture. So like, this is her. These are her.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I really remember reading that, and then I just totally blanked that she did say she created this language.
It's like a merging of concepts. Makes sense.
I've always heard like people talking about how Black people need to create their own language. I guess that's what you were kind of saying too with the ISIS papers, like as far as coding, creating their own code. They need to create their own language.
But she also says that too in the introduction that eventually Black people will have to create their own language, which is correct because
Yeah, I thought about.
I'm never gonna talk about that, but these words we may be casting a lot of spells on ourselves using this English language.
Agreed.
Yeah,
I totally agree, but also what about just learning Swahili? What about choosing a Central African language and then learning amongst ourselves? Isn't there there's a lot of power in those words because they too any language that you choose on East Africa is related to like Bantu. So the Bantu languages are like synonymous to like what Latin is to English. So in learning one of them or choosing one that we learn centrally that we speak any part of the world, like how we're speaking English, that would be a good move as well. Or I thought maybe the concept of creating a whole new language would be so that we now charge it with intention. We like
I think that may be the war stage, you know.
Also, I think it has to do with like Pan-Africanism, because like around like I feel like things are more divided now. But when this was written, I think having a new language also includes others who are like not people from different parts of the diaspora, like Caribbean people, Haitian people. You know, some words are non-native, like easy for them to pronounce because of different languages. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
that makes a lot of sense. That does.
Thanks for saying that. So eventually we will be, maybe in our lifetime, maybe we have a rhetoric major amongst our book club. You know, maybe she may pave the way for that new language, and we may help.
I do think it is good to like learn Swahili. I mean, I'm from Ghana. I don't even know Fonte that well, so to be honest. So I probably need to do some work.
I'm embarrassed too.
Yeah, you've been dominating.
We can learn together, Ezekiel, if you want, because it's pretty embarrassing. But the thing that's bad is that like other people shame you about it instead of like encouraging you. So it makes it even worse.
I mean, when I was reading this book, I literally felt I was like, I'm just gonna get Rosetta Stone and download Swahili because I feel like I have.
Beautiful.
I'm down to do that.
It's super. I feel super drawn to like the moment Mary came home and she was talking about how she was like literally learning Swahili from her coworker. I was like, I need to learn Swahili. That's gonna help me a lot, especially when I do go to Africa to begin organizing.
Like I used to lie and say I knew Swahili, so maybe this is the time for me to.
Yeah, I mean, I used to lie too. I used to gibberish in front of each other, and then like.
Wow, that's not funny.
It's not funny, but it is a reality. It's sad.
It's the intention. It's the intention.
I hope you guys were making were you guys making clicking noises? I hope y'all were making clicking noises.
No, but like,
somebody who speaks Xhosa today.
Let's analyze the behavior. It's not longing for our own language, you know.
It's projection. It's projection.
Our projection is longing for our own language. It's innocent, you know.
Okay.
It's a tragedy.
Really using the black man as the victim of
It's a true tragedy.
To your benefit.
Guys, I can't make any promises.
I said it was gibberish because it definitely was not. We didn't click at all. It was more like it was an energetic vocal expression, you know.
I'm sure.
I can't make any promises, but the co-worker who I was speaking to is a twin, and she has her sister is basically studying Swahili for at degree level. So I'm gonna ask her if she wants to join the group. I already know.
Okay,
I wanted to
read.
okay.
I'm gonna read from page 16. While the character of a culture's utamawazo is expressed most obviously in literature, philosophy, academic discourse, and pedagogy. I want to talk about that one first. So think again, you know, special education, you know, the education system in general is European focused, white focused. We learn about the American/revolution and whatever. It's just whites fighting amongst whites and owning black people. Then the whites killing the black leaders. All we learn about in the education K-12 curriculum. When I think about it, and white science, nothing about how all this stuff originates from Africa, especially all the sciences and math. And then it says the Utama Rojo becomes more visible in behavior and aesthetic expression, and whether visual, oral, or kinesthetic. So an individual expression of that could be, you know, any of your mass murders, terrorist attacks, Dylan Roos, Britain Tarrant, those people like, you know, individually expressing their need to destroy people. And rationalize it under the lens of white supremacy. And like, I feel like the immigrants the immigrants are taking over. So I got to go in this mosque and kill 51 of them. All while simulating, like playing a video game, even live streaming the event, even saluting your fellow white supremacists who calls themselves a influencer. But this is all, everything's interrelated and everything is supporting, self-sustaining, self-supporting. When we think about the Otama Wazo and Otama Rojo. If I'm being understood here.
From TV,
And can we think of some literature that may reinforce that may like give us examples of the Otama Rojo?
You're talking about like
Otama Wazo.
Otama Wazo. Any literature from the European or what?
Yeah, it could be like Oedipus. Why Oedipus is.
That came to my mind when I was reading this, like the whole Oedipus complex. But when you first said any literature, the first thing that came to my mind was Ender's Game. Ender's Game is a sci-fi science fiction book about a young white child who was like picked up by a army training regime because he's going to be trained to kill, and he is a natural born killer, and he goes to space to learn how to kill the space bugs who are flies. And, to me, it's like the mindset of going out to expand and then destroying these entire planets, and then to me that reminded me of the Umato Wazo, which is
Utama
Wazo. Yeah. Anyone have anything else to add, or was that clear for everyone?
I understand.
I need to refresh on that definition to maybe give a better example.
Yeah,
maybe it's just me, but I didn't get it too tough.
I heard where you were coming from. Definitely, I see, because I know what Ender's Game is about. I know exactly what that's about. So I was following you, but I'm just saying I need to read that definition again and give my example.
Yeah, I need to better understand those terms.
Okay.
It's still very hard for me to define a little bit.
Reiterate y'all definitions of it, because I feel like y'all have a good understanding.
Well, I just read it. She said like.
Sorry.
The book is. Even the definition of the book is like she even says it's like complex and not.
Yeah, and also this is the only introduction, so it's gonna be expanded upon. But I think even in introduction, like she's given like a somewhat grasp of how to understand it. So she says. Well, what I just read, I can't find it again.
I want
to. Go ahead, Jai or Mary.
Well, I wanted to go ahead and talk about. I hate to keep leaning on film so much, but that's like the best representation of how I can like explain what some of these concepts mean to me. So, for example,
that would be the Otama Rojo working right there when it comes to film.
See, I thought that would have been. Okay. Well, never mind then. I don't know.
Like that's a physical creation, like something that like their subconscious and conscious has that their energy has created that. It's real. It's a real thing that has come from their Utama Wazo. So if it's based off like a book, the book would be like a manifestation of the Utama Wazo because it's a piece of literature. And this literature is going to be written probably from like a perspective, a word view.
So would you say the Otama Wazo is the literature and the Otama Rojo is the film? Like, I mean, if we're kind of like, right? Because it's the source, the thought, and then the action, right?
I think it's better to understand as philosophy, but it's much deeper. It's much deeper than that. But I would say more like philosophy, ideology.
That's like Oh, go ahead, Mary.
Sorry, I just wanted to just try and explain to sharpen my understanding of Utamaroho. Is it okay? So let's say in Greek mythology, Zeus sleeps, like the explaining of the behavior. So Zeus basically having multiple lovers and therefore giving birth to so many different demigods all over the earth. That explanation, would that be the action? Would that be the
Okay.
the behavioral actual effect and in a yeah,
No.
so what was you gonna say?
Okay, so I would say the Utamawazo of the mythology of Greek, one of Zeus particularly, I would refer to the legend of Zeus where he actually is taking he would like come down into like, I don't know, Earth or into some realm and kidnap little boys and rape them, you know. So cause like in the whenever the Europeans have developed a god, it's always just been like a male god, and it's never been like a male or female counterpart. It's always just been a male. And it's one of the legends of Zeus. He would go and he was a child rapist. And you can Google this, and you can find this legend of Zeus. So the Utama Rojo of that would be sex farms during slavery, where white rich men would come and pick out little boys who they wanted to buy and take with them to repeatedly rape until they got older, and they would sell them to work in a plantation or to whatever meaning. It manifests in black people. The Tamaraho manifests in black people being put in stables, like sole purpose is to like rape multiple women and breed them. So that's how the Tamaraho would.
I can give an example, maybe.
Okay.
So, like, I think of it like, well, maybe, I don't know. Like, if you were like, there was only 2 black people, like if you were at a job interview and like there was a lot of people there, but there was 2 specifically people who were black in there to both get that job, and you saw that other black person, and maybe you felt a certain way, like maybe you felt a sense of almost like, what's that word when like you feel nervous, you feel like this is your competition, you feel you feel in a way antagonistic to that person. I think that's the Utamaraho. And then the Utamawazo justifies that feeling by telling yourself, oh well, there can only be one black person at that job, or like, oh man, we're not cut out, they're not going to hire both of us, so this person is my enemy. And so I think the Utamaraho is like an emotional, visceral response to something because of the Asili that is like hierarchical and competitive.
Yeah, that's right.
The Utamawazo is you using the Asili to come up with the rationalization for the Utamaraho. I don't know if that makes sense.
So, thank you so much.
That's the best way that I thought about it. Like, I think about the Asili, the Utamawazo, and the Utamaroho as like the source, the thought, and then the action. That's like how do you feel like that's not correct? Because that's how I'm imagining. Like that's how it sounds to me. Like the source of the problem, the thought that creates, and then the actions you take because of the thoughts.
No, see, it's not the actions based on the thoughts, right? I mean, she says that it's cyclical and they all reinforce each other. Right. But like the Utamaraho, I think it's more visceral. The thought is your rationalization of your feelings, whatever feelings you have. So if you see a person that's homeless, or you see like a black woman in the welfare line, you have this feeling of like, ugh, you know, and then like your Utamawazo, because of like the Asili, and your Utamawazo tries to justify that feeling by being like, well, you know, she's probably she's probably lazy, or she shouldn't have kids, like dumb shit like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but the Utamawazo, the Utamaroho, and the Asili, they're all one being. It's connected. It's one and the same. I like. But
maybe I feel like I'm getting really fixated on the Utamawazo and the Utamaroho. Maybe I feel like the differences are. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I'm just not picking them up that well. I'm awfully.
Okay.
Why you gotta stone me like that, bro?
Like the right?
Well, yeah, like I think when everyone was talking about how like the Europeans have this like war lust, and then they try to say that they're like doing it to like benefit people in those countries. Like that's the Utamawazo, like trying to justify it by saying
The
that,
rationalization.
oh yeah, we're bringing this to them. But that Utamaraho, that's the action of like inflicting war on them, you know, being violent in that way.
I'm not trying to be funny or nothing, but how is that different than like because the way that because to me Asili means source, like the source of all the nonsense. And then to me the Tamawazo is like to me that's it's the thoughts to justify why they're doing what they're doing. And the Tomorrow is the actual act of aggression. It's the actual, and that's what I don't know if I didn't. That's how it makes sense to me, man. That's.
I feel like you're just kind of like thinking of it like too linearly. Like there's one before the other. Like the
that's
definition. Yeah, she helped me. Ashley's definition kind of helped me a lot. I feel like in your definition, Jair, is like the Sealy is kind of like where all the nonsense resides in a sense.
Right.
Like that's where it all is, you know. And yeah, I don't have the definitions down, the terms down, but I definitely understand that when they were talking about how one is like thought and one is the heart, like the definitions that Mary gave, like that makes a lot of sense. Like, is it the Utamo Rojo? Like, is that thought or is it the other one?
That's the heart.
That's the heart. Rojo, I remember you said
The
was
vital
heart.
force.
Yeah, so that's how you feel about the Sealy, about what you're seeing. And Utama Wazo, is that what it is?
Utama Wozo is the thought, and Utama Raho is the force of the culture.
So that the thought is your justification for feeling that way,
right?
You know, like so the Sealy kind of is cause you to feel a certain way about it, and then your thought is the rationalization for it.
Yeah, but I wouldn't. Don't strain you guys. Don't strain yourselves trying to simplify this concept. You know,
because it's complex. Yeah.
Yeah. Like this is gonna be a complex like topic, and we're gonna understand this topic as we continue reading, and yeah, it's gonna be. It's gonna be epic. I'm sure, like, yeah. But I do think that you guys may have been trying to simplify these two concepts,
and they're not simple.
Yeah, and also separate them, these three concepts, but it's all one thing. This is one thing.
And I also apologize if my understanding of these concepts are a little off, because I mean definitely I imagine I'll benefit from like having read further.
Well, everyone's working through them. You don't have to like come perfect. Like that's not the point.
Honestly, as we keep explaining it more, that it just solidifies my understanding. It's really
and
helpful.
the good thing is chapter 1 is called Utamawaza. Cultural structuring of thought.
It's all good.
Yep. You have any more questions?
My question is more so the observation of the commentary that she makes earlier about anthropology. And in order to study anthropology is to basically be met with anti-Afrocentrism. And I just thought about how my fear before of Dr. Frances Cress Wilson's book, me putting it in my essay because of my fear of it being called pseudoscience in the academic world, and just over the years understanding that everything that I've had to learn is via internet, and then not even knowing that these books are something that can be available in like mainstream libraries. It adds to the accreditation. What's the word? Yeah, just accrediting. Yes, it's credibility, and just me having to remove that European mindset that is by design, that the most of the information that will set us free will not come as from the national science paper or the most latest magazine. It will be coded. They'll talk about melanin, but in a coded manner, so we don't understand it to be us that they're talking about.
So
So I just
Oh, sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
So I just want to say that I want to just like for us to like maybe unpack why anthropology's use in the first place of just basically accrediting their own existence and tying being able to tie civilization to their own creation or the modernization of it or the birth of the Renaissance and all this information, but not stating that it's via anthropology or learning of other cultures that they'd be able to accumulate this their wealth of knowledge on.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Before I answer the question, I just want to say the oppressor, aka white people, those who classify themselves as white, and those who are European and possess the European mindset, will never ever give their oppressees, those who they oppress, the tools to emancipate themselves or liberate themselves.
I had the same thought. It's crazy.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like never. And also, another way for y'all to get more acquainted with the Utamawazo and Utamoroho is those diagrams literally structure how they all work and connect together. So the more you study that, the more you'll be able to say, oh, like physical activity is part of this right here versus that. And to answer your question, I think it goes back to the understanding that the white people and those who classify themselves as white and the European, they even though to me they're all the same entity, I just want to continuously classify them as they classify themselves. I think that's just to justify our current predicament. Like they can say like that people are just ill-trained and savages. That's why they kill each other. That's why no one takes them seriously. That's why there's no unification. There's no single black leader. It just justifies our current status, and it erases empathy. It erases apathy. People are very apathetic towards like black people and how black people are treated. And everyone knows how black people are treated. They just
absolutely
acknowledge it.
Yeah, and if you really want to, master the concept and the material we're learning, Dr. Ani has a really amazing lecture on the book where, like, just how we all watch those 2-hour movies and those episodes or those shows, you can watch a 2-hour lecture.
And it's already in the WhatsApp, the lecture.
Oh, perfect. Wow. Thank you.
Perfect. So yeah, Ash already.
Thank you so much.
I really like your question, Mary. I was like excited to answer it because I've been thinking about that too. And I was thinking about anthropology in and of itself is inherently racist because it precludes that like we exist through like life in this linear progress of like you start off primitive and you end off modern, and it's just a fetishization of like progress and technology. And so it's never looking at things like cyclically or that the primitive man is the man that as they should be. And so I really liked your question because I think that you can't even have an anthropology because you're looking at it through a white supremacist lens of a beginning and like moving towards something like, but really like I think it's really incumbent on us to no longer think linearly and to like incorporate like the past into our future, which is something that I think anthropology doesn't do. And I've been trying to learn how to do that in seeing a future that is not a fetishization of progress, of things becoming more technical, more better, more efficient, but maybe things slowing down and not being as easy. And maybe we live in a world where it takes 5 hours to cook your meal. And like, because you actually have to pick your food and actually spend a portion of, like, imagine how much time people spent just preparing their food in their day. Like, no wonder people consider themselves bored. Everything is so quick that you spend so much time with just free time, like not really knowing what to do. So I think like not fetishizing progress is like something that I've been thinking about a lot.
Good point. Very good points.
Yeah, we live in a world full of instant gratification on a day-to-day basis. Very few things are appreciated because of the time they take.
Yeah, well, that's European culture. You know, consume and then from your consumption, attain pleasure, rinse, repeat. You know,
And throw away too.
Yeah.
Like never reuse, never fix something that is broken, just throw it away and get a new one. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah. It's funny
Shit
how
is
you
heavy,
also
man.
mentioned it being like being linear, you know, like it's almost like now you can almost kind of, I don't know, almost kind of see it. It's like you're kind of becoming this modern man. It's like you're almost reverting back to being like going back to being primitive. Like we're all finding out like, well, these people, like being primal wasn't actually that bad for you as a person. Like it was actually good. Like there weren't all these external stressors. Like depression wasn't a thing. But as you become more modern, like these issues they keep happening. And yeah, so it's like we're almost going back in a circle, like moving more to being primitive.
I think that's because what the definition of what modern is dictated through a white lens. So if people might feel depressed because they're not living up to the expectation that modernism is putting on them. Like, and if you're not meeting whatever those standards are, then just like how Trey was talking about, how like if you're not meeting whatever standards they want you to meet, they can categorize you as all these different things that don't even that aren't relative to you at all in any way, shape, or form, to demonize you and for people who don't have apathy or empathy for like the way that you exist, because it's not the way that they exist or the way that they view the correct way to exist being. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it goes back to how Dr. Welsing was talking about like the anxiety and that alienation, and I forgot the last one, but like
narcissism.
Yeah, and the narcissism.
Yeah, I made an observation today. You know, with me and after driving through through the once hood. You know, it was once a very poor neighborhood, but like nonetheless, even in like my aunt's terrible neighborhood, there's like a really nice mental facility there. So the Europeans always have like nice mental institutions around black neighborhoods because the European is convinced that the African is like a crazy savage, a heathen that needs to be like medicated and still civilized because these so-called mental institutions are like more places of like torture rather than like treatment, or correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I can't disagree. I don't have that much knowledge about that, but I do agree that people are victimized in institutions that are supposed to help them, like prison specifically. I mean, yeah.
I mean, what you said is true. Like USC, University of Southern California, in South Central LA. But
they should have called it the University of South Central, bro.
Right. From like from where these gangs live, and then you could get to one of the most popular higher learning education institutions in the world. So.
Sorry, keep going.
No, I do think that's by design. I do think there are a lot of surveillance institutions in black neighborhoods and full of black and brown people, and I do think that's by design as well. Having like hospitals, like really poor standard mental hospitals for black people as well, just to
poor standard everything, poor standard living conditions across the board, mental health, the grocery stores we shop at. Just general things that we need. The things that we have access to are of lower quality comparatively, and it's not something that we're making up. It's just the reality of where we live, and it's very unfortunate. I don't. Sometimes I feel kind of. I don't know. It makes me feel really bad. I don't want to like be counterproductive to this conversation, but that shit is by design, of course. So.
Yeah, it's definitely by design. Like USC is one of the most expensive colleges in America, near one of the poorest neighborhoods in America.
A 10-minute walk away.
And that whole USC Village, which is like the only place that you can get healthy food, is like on that campus. They tore down housing for Black people to make those villages for white people who pay $50,000 a year or semester to get Trader Joe's and shit like that. And like even us, we have to drive from where we live to go over there to get healthy food, contributing to their economy.
Yeah.
Like it's all by design.
Yeah,
Like,
it's not because you always says like if you want to be safe, you have to go amongst the white people. Honestly, you know, want to get healthy food, you gotta go where the white people are.
And that's sad, man. It's terrible.
Fine, you know? Until the collective consciousness is once our collective consciousness is a collective consciousness again, you know, we're gonna still be in this position. So this is why critical mass is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I never got to.
That's lit.
First of all, Trey, your background is just like so entertaining.
Yeah, it's hella distracting.
It's fine, Mary. Yeah, you're saying.
Yeah. So, what in responses of what you had said, Ashley, I thought that was so important. Like, imagining. I can't remember exactly the terms, but to paraphrase, imagining a future where we're not fetishizing
progress.
Time in a sense, or like, okay, sorry, that's just the example that you said. What it led me to think about was how we can get enjoyment from like cooking, and how that could take hours to do it at a time. And in the way that society is constructed right now, it's just not feasible to spend 5 hours unless you're doing it on Sunday and you're preparing for Sunday or Thanksgiving, which is a commodified, constructed holiday where they have prepared everything in the shop for you to buy commodified. Like those are the times that you can spend a whole day cooking like pancakes on pancake day and stuff like that. But in terms of like it being a part of like everyday life and society, would definitely, I feel like slowing down is something that it doesn't feed the white supremacist capitalist system. So
it's not sustainable, not for them.
Exactly, it will be so hard to, but I feel like it's so important to understand that we, like, okay, so spending your money on thrill seeking, not to say that thrill seeking is bad, but skydiving, these are all adrenaline junkie style ways of leisure or behaving, because I feel like
that's entertainment.
I feel like maybe it's not European in particular, but I feel like it's something like in their DNA that you need to like thrill seek or to like experience being on the edge or something like that. Whereas I can get that same pleasure from skydiving, from cooking, because of how much I love it, and submersing myself in music because of the intro thoughts that I can have while doing that, as opposed to ultimate thrill seeking as a way of culture.
Yeah, shark diving.
It's what Dr. Welsing was talking about, the anxiety, right? The constant discomfort within yourself, constantly to seek more.
I was literally thinking the only reason why our society works the way it works, it's a microcosm of the European mind. Sometimes I'll be by myself. If I'm not doing anything, I'll get like anxious and I'll have anxiety, and I feel like I have to do something. I have to watch it. I have to put something on TV. I have to have music on. I have to have information coming to me, stimuli. And to me, I'm learning that that's like the trauma that I've collected, and like from living underneath a racist, white supremacist based society system and culture, and how every form of like my entertainment, my politics, my education, all these things have been like kind of infiltrated and been attacked and been not really what they're supposed to be because of white supremacy. I'm not really enjoying anything. I'm kind of like participating in activities underneath these.
That's funny that you said that, bro. Like I have that issue pretty frequently, like about like just sitting still, like without like nothing happening, no music, nothing to distract me from like the nothingness that's there. Like
just I don't want to hog the mic, but just say one more thing. Like I don't know who, I think I was listening to a talk with Dr. Chris Wilson, and she was talking.
All right, take care.
Bye. See you guys.
She was talking about how I think it was Frederick Douglass, how he was able to it was either him or some other person, but she was talking about how they had so much melanin, their skin was so dark that they were able to go outside and just be. They enjoyed being in the calmness, and a lot of their inventions came from plants. How they were like able to communicate with the plants, and they would go out every morning. I think it was George Washington Carver actually.
Yeah, that makes sense because he was like an environmentalist and stuff too.
Yeah, so that's the person. So it's in our nature to be calm. It's in our nature to be one with the water, one with the grass. Like I love my bare feet on the grass. To me, that's like a surviving part of my actual like pure self.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I just want to say that Utama Rojo cannot like Utama Rojo is the manifestation of like theme parks and roller coasters. Like the European cannot exist without being able to exert that like huge
Aggression.
amount of like anxiety and aggression. Yes. So yeah, Ashley, you were gonna say?
Yeah, what you guys were saying, like whenever I go to Ghana, it's so like that. Like people just sit and you will see people just sitting there for like hours, not doing anything, like maybe talking. They're not even talking to each other. They're just sitting next to each other and nothing is happening. And that's such the norm. It's like people are just so comfortable just being. And like, I'll just watch my aunts do that. And then you'll see the people who are like American constantly walking around, constantly watching something, constantly having headphones in. And that's so not how a lot of people in Ghana are. Like, I mean, they're trying to change it now because they're trying to make everywhere like a new world order. everywhere is the same. But it's really interesting when you go to other countries and you see people just living, not thinking about, oh, what am I doing right now? Am I being productive? Am I bored? Blah, blah. Like nobody's bored in Ghana. Like you like that's not a thing, you know?
Yeah. The American mindset is meant to be constantly entertained.
Yeah, constant pleasure seeking is like one of our biggest downfalls, I think.
Well, that's in the book. That's in the book. That's really in the book.
Just to add to what's being said, just giving like some like memories from my mother. Like so she has moments where she just shows up and like would buzz, and like that would be the indication that she's here. Like, and then I got really angry and I was like, you can't do that, mum. You have to like let me know when you're coming. You don't know that I have plans. She was like, oh, in Africa, people come to your house all day. People will be knocking on your door. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna let them know where I live. Like, but I understand that community feel of like people just, oh, let me see if so-and-so is home. I'm passing home from so-and-so. I just shout at the compound and then someone will pass the message, and then it was just more community based back in Syria. Yeah. Well, I'd say that's the case for most African cultural countries, colonized or not.
Yeah, I agree. And when I moved to America, that's how it was. Like a lot of people would always just come over without any like notice. And then I noticed once my family started getting more money, they started getting more European in their mindset. And it would be like, you can't just have people here. People can't come over without asking, like, and they can't stay this long. I'm not going to feed them. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, yeah. When it's like, when you're in Ghana, like literally you just show up and like people just provide you with like a plethora of food. Oh, here's a visitor. I'm going to treat them better than I treat like myself, you know, which is, yeah, people can really change depending on.
Damn, that's crazy. That's insane, yeah. That's really crazy.
That community feels almost like a part of the natural asili of African culture, not to generalize. But that
yeah, and that's the point I also wanted to make was people always talk shit about Black people sitting outside and not doing anything, and that irritates me so much. People are always like, oh, like why are they're just sitting there and they're not, and it's like yeah, loitering is like an actual law, like. And it's like, that's what, like when you go back to Ghana, that's what people do. So that's like almost a way of going back to like your asili. Like you're just chilling with your people. You're not like doing anything because you don't have to do anything. Like,
yeah, bro, like European has to war make. It has
to let out good vibration, you know?
Yeah, it has to let out their spirit, their war, like their war energy, you know? They have to let out that aggression.
Yeah.
So like, I would say I'm gonna say you will never see a calm European, you know, unless they're plotting to destroy you. Other than that,
Damn.
so yeah, so like, you know,
Oh my god.
that that's a small original right there.
You'll never see a calm European unless they're planning to destroy you. Jeez. That's intense, bro.
Or the plan is working.
Look at the evidence. Look at the evidence. Look at how we don't even have computers. We don't have, black people in America do not have communities.
Nope.
They do not have neighborhoods. They have hoods.
I'll tell you something that I learned from talking to my mom last night. I was talking about this book club and how important it is, and then my mom said something that a lot of black people love to say. Well, we have to stop doing this or that to each other. And I was like, okay, listen, man. Like, I'm not saying that we don't have inner community issues, but I think we have so many of them because we don't even have a real sense of community anyway. That's the real problem. The problem is that white supremacy has created all these obstacles for you to have to endure, so you don't know how to play the game that they're trying to make you play.
And really,
But also, oh, sorry, you can go ahead, Trey.
Politically, like, people need to understand that prehistorically, Africa was one nation. All Africans traded with one another and communicated with each other, and they all traveled with the world. And they were like very, very a communal group of people, and that has been disrupted by colonization and racism and white supremacy. So like, a lot of people have all these like, we need to do better as a race. We were doing fantastic until we were like conquered, basically.
And I think what your mom was saying is like the utamawazo, because it's like she's trying to justify why a group of people are existing in horrible conditions that the government is like forcing them to. Yeah. Instead of like, and like, it's the asili to think that, well, that's just their issue, I'm my own thing. Instead of like the thinking like, well, if black people are having a hard time, whatever, interpersonally relating to each other or building community, that like, it shouldn't be like, oh, well, they're just fucked up. It should be, what can we as a group do to support that and to make sure that we're building this community? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I agree. Think it's so like the utamawazo to like try to rationalize why people are suffering, and instead of like thinking of a way to support, it's just like, well, that's just why they're fucked up, and I'm not going to be a part of like doing anything about it. Yeah.
It's extremely problematic and unhelpful in any way.
Because my parents do the same thing.
I hate that. I hate that so much. It's almost like I'm trying not to give up. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying not to like to just be like, well, that's it. That's just how they are, and they're not gonna learn. Like, I don't want to. I know that my mom is capable because I'm capable, so I know she's capable. I know that we're all capable of digesting this information. It's just a matter of letting go of the things that make you scared, man. Like, people are afraid. People are afraid to know, because once you know, you can't. Is that why with the shoulder roll? Yeah, that's funny. But anyway, I was like, I try to reach out to my family, and I know they don't get, like, it's not that they don't care, but they're scared. I know they're scared because I'm scared. I'm scared to like sometimes to know this information, because once you know, you can't unknow. You just know forever. Like, and there's nothing you can do about that except, you know, try to do something with the information. But it is what it is.
I understand, like why one would possess fear, and to me, like I feel like I've been so traumatized by the system. I'm able to dissociate myself from like feelings.
Video super distracting. I'm sorry.
Fear is something that I've been able to like detach from. So, am I physically afraid of like this? Is like, no, I don't want to live in fear. That's why I'm doing it, because I don't want to live in fear. I don't want to live under attack, and I'd rather be dead than have to like be perceived by 99% of the people that I see as like inhuman. You know, that's the reality. I'd rather I'm cool off that. I'm cool off not being able to be free and like move freely. So I'd rather channel my Kamehameha into making sure that quickly as possible. You know,
Me too, bro. Me too. It's
like,
definitely a learning process, though.
It's like fear, like we're all gonna die one day anyway. So like,
Hopefully, no time soon. You know.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm trying to be 133. You know, I'm trying to make it to that age. So I'm trying to be an elder.
Trying to be a sage, bro.
Yeah, trying to be an elder on planet Earth. You know? I was there when it happened. I saw it. I you know, and I feel like prehistorically we were living that long too. You know, just in my thoughts and my own.
Well,
yeah, I have an aunt who was like 120 something, so it's definitely possible. It's definitely
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, when you're not breathing in pollution, and
eating
like
Travis Scott hamburgers all fucking day.
Yeah, poisoned by the American government, it's a lot easier, I think.
Jesus.
And not only that, your grandmother is probably surrounded by family, or was nurtured as opposed to left in a nursing home, where discarded basically.
Yeah.
It's a death house.
I mean, think about the stress of just like knowing that if something happens to you, there is no community to support you, and you may just like literally either be like on the streets or dead. Like that's a huge stressor and a cause of anxiety that fucks up your body. Like, and I think that everyone is dealing with that every day. Wow. I think that if you got in a car accident and you had to pay hospital bills,
that will set you back for a lot.
And yeah, like that's that type of fear that we walk around with. That's stress. It messes up your body.
I don't even thought you walk around with a fucking stress on a bag. Like that's crazy.
I think you can also understand the Asili as the European hating, like no, not hating, but not caring about old people as well, not caring about their children. Because you know, a lot of white people do end up in like those nursery homes, which are not well maintained, you know, or not a condition that you would put a so-called loved one into. So like, you know, the European Asili will manifest itself, will show its true nature, which is like they only care about you if you are for their one goal, which is European supremacy, white supremacy. So understand that, you know, if you're a white person, you haven't been watching that, the people don't care about you. You know, do what you can. John Brown it out. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you, honestly.
And I think another. Oh, go ahead, Trey.
I was gonna say like and the Silly is a force that is wanting to maintain in power. So like, if there are Europeans out there who are willing to work towards dismantling this system of racism and supremacy, like you are welcome to, you know, do that. You know, you don't have to be the monsters that you know. That's what I want to say. That's it.
Yeah, I wanted to say what like add on what Swa was saying. Like I think another part of like wanting to decolonize our minds, I think white people have a huge fear of death because they're not connected to like spiritual realms. So they really see like once this ends, like this is it. And I think that's also why they hate old people so much, because it's a production of like the end for them.
Yeah.
Versus like for non-white people, non-white religions, it's a transitional period. And you're gonna get somewhere else after this. And I think it's important to also like have that in our mindset too.
Hey Ash, I want to ask you. So do you think that? Because it's funny that you say that. Like, they think this might be the end for them. Do you think that's because they also don't really believe in Christianity, like the way that they claim to?
Of course they don't believe in Christianity.
Yeah, I don't think they do at all.
Yeah,
I mean, I just wanted to say, I don't know if it was a book, but I definitely had that same thought about how elderly people in the context of racism and supremacy are like physical representations of the ending of their life force. And that is exactly why there's so much animosity and so much like separation between the youth and then the middle age and the elderly, because white people do have an insane fear of death, and they do everything to present the opposite. So in our media, we see a lot of like
movies about death, a lot of TV shows about death. You know, there's an actual show about the Grim Reaper. You know, it's
And
like,
Trey,
Yeah.
I want to piggyback off what you said, Trey, about like the elderly and how how they're viewed in context of white supremacy. That can like directly relate to when we watch Rampage. Because remember, I was asking why didn't that guy, you know, assault those old people in that elderly home, and then, you know, then anyway, my question is answered due to this conversation.
Yeah, and I want to add to my so-called Black Christians, like these books here, like these books are more of a holy text than the Bible, which has only been used at your detriment. I promise you can liberate yourself better with these texts than the Bible.
Second,
I agree.
So, good luck. See you on the battlefield.
Yo, we've been on the battlefield since birth. What are you talking about? Like, we were born on the battlefield, you know?
Yeah, for real.
Children of war, you know?
it's a boy. Put him in a public school.
Yeah, like even in middle school, like being trained with like Rumble, we will have mini wars, like mini race wars. But with first in elementary, we had them subconsciously. We just happened to be the black kids fighting the Mexican kids.
Yeah.
And then in middle school, we were intentional. We were like, okay, we're gonna have a Rumble, and we're gonna be versus Mexican kids, and we were just fight. You know, it's just like the kind of European training we've had. You know, race war, fight, destroy the ones who don't look like you.
Yeah, you're a cultural other.
Yeah, have fun doing it too, and that's the core of it.
Play ball. That's crazy, bro. So like you're identified as a cultural other, attacking other cultural others, and everybody's having a damn blast, you know?
Yeah, just harming each other and having a blast doing it. And then like waiting for the next time to do it again.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's a European silly right there. Damn.
That is silly. I feel like from now on, when white people get on my nerves, I'm like, you on that silly shit right now. You need to really calm down.
Honestly, I was literally just thinking of words like "you're silly, don't fit me."
Oh, I like that. That's a vibe.
Hey, Mary, what'd you say?
On my way home on the train when I was reading it, I was just like, "You're silly, don't fit me." But I need more bars to go around it.
I like that. I like that a lot. I'm about to jog that.
I knew you were gonna say that. I'm about to say you're right there, Mary.
On me, I'm about to be like, I made it up all on my own. It was.
This is how it starts. Let's shed this mind.
The American way. It was me. I wanted to read more of it, and I know it's going to be good for Mary and Guy and those who weren't able to cover the text extensively.
What?
Where was it? All right, so a lot of this stuff, the city is basically culture, and there's a really nice blurb here on, I don't have the page, but she's quoting someone else, and he's talking about culture is an instrument for making. Cooperation, natural. Its success depends on the extent to which it is allowed to be self-authenticating. Though it allows for internal discussion, the principles of decisions and such discussions are themselves provided by culture. By uniting the people in common beliefs and attitudes, culture fills with order that portion of life which lies beyond the pale of state intervention. It fills in such a way as it, at the same time, to integrate its society on the basis of common actions, common actions, common interests, common attitudes, and common values. It creates the basis of the formulation of a common destiny and cooperation in pursuing it. If one looks at the West, one finds that this use of culture is well developed. It is what is involved when one hears it said that this or that belief will destroy some way of life. And that way of life must be defended no matter what the cost. So to me, this has allowed me to really understand the importance of culture, how culture governs everything about our like positionality and how we use it in the world. So the fact that the theory of these European people are so like anti-earth and anti-black in nature by design, definitely something to be aware of.
Yeah.
And, thank the text for like being, what was this one?
Yeah, so I want to add to that by saying culture is insanely important, which is why, Black people don't have a culture. The so-called Black culture is hip hop stuff. Like a lot of it is like not culture, it's worthless, because culture and a lot of our education, the same thing, is worthless because culture and education are supposed to, be tools meant to ensure the survival of your people. This is what
the community.
I just want to say real fast that hip hop is definitely important. It's been bastardized though. It's really bad, but the roots of hip hop are not for destruction. But I do see where you're going. But just know that.
I understand where you're coming from, guy. But I'm talking about just like the mainstream, the current status quo.
Yeah, of course.
What is popular is.
It's to the detriment of Black people. Yeah, definitely.
At all. And I think we should get comfortable saying Black people don't have a culture. We can start developing a culture. Unless
I disagree with that though. I don't think that Black people are culturalists.
But like maybe African culture, but what is exactly Black culture? Like what?
American Black culture is specific.
Let me put it in the means of our race.
One at a time.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
What is Black culture and it means of surviving the race of white people?
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Okay.
I feel like the people that we're reading right now are like the germinations of that culture, but it's not like spreading, unfortunately, because there's a larger one that's there. But I feel like there's like a burgeoning culture that's happening, but it's just being suppressed constantly.
Yeah, I think Black people have a rich culture outside of white supremacy, and it's been hidden. I do think Black culture right now is a projection of white supremacy, and we want people to believe what we are.
Yeah.
Like ghetto, highly energetic, really funny, like the most emotion. It's just someone you can like easily get energy from and like vampire off of.
Yeah.
So, seriously, I do not think Black people have a culture that is sustainable, respectable, and something to be honored in this country or in European. Just in the Western world, period.
I want to piggyback off what you're saying right now, Trey, because I think it's important to realize maybe we need to, in addition to learning and having the education to view the world objectively based on on what we're reading through these texts. We also need to have some sort of way to protect our culture. Our culture is not protected. So I feel where Swaz coming from, talking about like how right now we don't have a single thing in place to bring forth justice instead of white supremacy. But originally, I'm sorry to be so fixated, but hip hop was about talking about the social injustices that we face on a day-to-day basis. It became something else once it was able to be turned into a commodity, but it wasn't always supposed to be this detrimental kind of behavior. And in addition to that, any Black culture that we create, we have to make sure we protect it. But people are quick to sell out, and it's hard to hold on to any cultural significance, because once it's something that can be sold and repackaged, then it's bastardized and it's too late. So how do we stop our culture from being bastardized when we try to create culture? Right now, I can see people starting to read these texts. Then I can start seeing companies selling Yurugu fucking tie-ins, the Yurugu McDonald's meal. I can fucking literally see this shit. I can see this shit happening.
Afrocentrism has already been like a trend that happened.
But I'm talking about these texts though. These texts
it happened around the time that like Yurugu came out. Like you don't remember like the 80s and 90s, like the whole Afrocentrism that was happening. It was pretty popular.
Yeah, they modified that.
But like I wanted to talk about what Swa was saying, because I think even when you I do agree with what you're saying, Jair, because like when you think about jazz, like all these art forms of like
blues,
music,
yeah,
etc. But also like when you define hip hop, like you're also defining it in opposition, right? To
hip hop was in opposition to originally.
but like I think that's the issue too, is like I don't know if we'll ever have a culture until white supremacy ends, because everything that we are doing is
commodified.
not commodified, it's in response to white supremacy.
Oh,
so
damn.
it's always white supremacy is always the main focus. It's always a response to it, a way to end it, etc.
So you're saying we can't have a culture of resistance until white supremacy is...
Well, no, our culture wouldn't be of resistance, right?
Yeah,
it's
right,
only our
right.
culture. We have a culture of, or we're trying to find a culture of resistance now. But once white supremacy ends and we replace it with justice, that's when we're like, what is really the culture?
We'll develop a culture, hopefully, of universal people. You know, universal man, universal woman, and universal way, if that is necessary. But but like we need to get our self-respect, you know, our Black self-respect, non-white self-respect, way up, and we need to get educated on the European who is our enemy according to our scholars. You know, they're telling us these people are designed. You know, even Michael Bradley, a white man. A white man said, you know, white people are probably, because of racism, will destroy the planet. He said it himself. Study them. Prehistoric. They've been destroying themselves and the planet since prehistoric times. You know, so we have to understand what we're dealing with. And it is, share this book club. Like this is a plea. You know, we're pleading for members, for soldiers in this war. You know, because it's bad. It's bad out here.
Just to like piggyback off what everyone has said, because as you guys are all American and me being British, I have like that outward view growing up of American culture. And my understanding of American culture was basically Black culture. So me understanding that America has basically watered down anything that you do try and grasp as culture to basically have some responsibility for it. And also the fact that it has, I do think that's an important point that was made about everything is like an act of a reaction or resistance from slavery, or healing from slavery culture developed.
Yeah.
From bush jazz in its expression, but also like the choices of names. Like sometimes it's not even about the Queen's English, like it being called ratchet. It just could be about hitting certain tones and I'll just give an example. Like Islam in West Africa, Sierra Leone, not Sierra Leone in particular, but like West Africa has like dominated a lot of our culture. And my mother is called Asata, and her husband, who is Muslim, used to call her Aisha because that's the interpretation in the Quran. And her being called Asata by my grandmother, my stepfather used to literally be like, oh, that uncivilized way. Her name is Aisha, sort of thing. And my grandma would be like, it's Asata. Like, so to basically iterate it. Yeah, so for me, it was in understanding that, like, it's even the culture of how we enunciate or using certain tones for energy frequency has all been bastardized or derogatized. So even when you do observe your culture, it's always going to look derogative from this aspect, because the lens that it's been used to observe it has constantly derogatized it.
Yeah, I think Black culture or just American culture, like Black culture just eventually becomes American culture, which is just continued
to be a commodity. Yeah.
No, the continued refinement, maintenance, and expansion of white supremacy. You know, white people wouldn't be dancing without Black people. But yeah, you know, dancing has never liberated us. You know, not that I'm sure it has. You know, before we went onto a battle at ancient times, but currently, that's not valuable culture. That's American culture.
Let me ask you, Shwa.
Yeah.
I know that you feel like every moment that we live should be used towards liberation, and I agree.
I don't feel that way. I feel like
well, let me not put words in your mouth, things, but I just feel like that's how I'm perceiving what you're saying. I feel like leisurely things, like I feel like the way it sounds to me is like you're saying that anything that's not constructive towards justice in removing white supremacy is a waste of time.
No, I'm just saying we should call things what they are. You know.
No, it is true. Like if you're in a war, are you gonna be fucking playing video games during a war? Like maybe we should stop fucking.
Yeah.
Always be like leisurely. Like this is actual genocide is happening. Like.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree with Ad.
But I'm not. I wasn't done. I'm sorry, but I was just what I was saying was this. How do you get like? Well, I guess your point was not what I thought it was, but even still, how do you get people to stop doing things that are not productive as far as like bringing forth justice is concerned?
Well, I've been like pleading to people, and also I've been like leading by example. You know, like I'm starting up like these 2-hour reading sessions. And then maybe Caleb may start reading when he sees all of us downstairs reading together and listening to the binary beats. You never know. But leading by example, and also like practicing like anti-white supremacy should be our religion. This is our belief. We believe in anti-white supremacy. People ask us like, what are they doing today? I'm trying to end white supremacy. I'm trying to get more people in white supremacy. Stuff like that. So I would say lead by example and like just really be like feel like this is a priority. Like this is a priority of mine. I care about this. I know this is important. I know this is doable. And it's really like readjusting your priorities and understanding that we like are addicted to white values and have a lot of cleansing to do.
Yeah, and I think it's important to like be mindful of language because you can't make it's like a white idea to think you can make people do anything or like I think it's just like what Swa was saying, like you have to just be the world or the person that you want other people to be and hope that they want that too. But you can't make them or force them to do anything.
Yeah. Starting with the man in the mirror always is like a massive showcase of how to be. Your lifestyle will either encourage others to want to do the same or push it away. And like the content, what you take in, reading, like Ashley stated, everybody stated, but also for me, watching shows like A Different World, because I never had access to A Different World until like a more older age. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that TV show by Bill Cosby. Yeah. So even though like the way it started, I saw like colorism, I saw all kinds of things that kind of annoyed me in terms of who was the lead character, but like they had like, and who got attention and who was like the friend that never got any play. Like even that I saw colorism in that, but then storylines of trying to like introduce Pan-Africanism, introduce Black cultural awareness, introduce the truth about slavery, the things that were very healing for me actually to see on TV. But also it just shows how many levels that we actually are shedding and have to basically work towards shedding. But just to conceptualize, that's a place where I saw that. That's another method of talking to your people, reach out through media.
Yeah. Also, when you are consuming, participating in the entertainment area of people activity, decode it. I was watching Raised by Wolves, a very European supremacy, white supremacist like material. We have this white man, like following this religion, teaching this white child. Literally last night, he taught this white child how to, Well, like it's just
the show is extremely problematic.
The show is very racist. Well, it just has so many European themes, and then you can see the Otama Rojo and the Otama Wazo manifest a lot. And yeah. So I have another question for you guys. How do you guys feel like you guys can return, or at least begin to return to your African hood?
For me, I think like reading books like this and reading books like Addicted to White and learning more about what my ancestors did prior to being colonized, and also just like getting my mind to a point where I intuitively and spiritually feel that it's intact. You know, reclaiming my amo, my twin, my other twin. Something that we have to do because we are indoctrinated. We have like sacrificed our own amo. I think subconsciously or consciously. I don't know how it happened, but we are like black versions of
Europeans, man.
Mindset, our mindset.
Yeah, our mind. Yeah, European mind.
And but yeah, definitely reading this book and like processing this book and like speaking a different language. There's a lot of things,
Mary.
I want to say my mic was going in and out when you was asking the question, but I got a bit of the sense.
I'll ask again.
But I'd like to hear it again.
Yeah, what can you do to reconnect with your African hood? What do you think you can do to reconnect with your African hood, or to make it easier? What do you think you can do to begin the journey to reconnect to your African hood?
Download a language app like Trey had suggested and learn more Swahili words. It wouldn't be my first time, but it'll be my first time with an accountable group that I can basically share these words with. These are things that I had tried to experience like once before, but it lasted a week. I should probably learn Fente first.
Probably beneficial because if I go to Ghana, then I can at least talk to them about the stuff that I'm reading, like in the native language, and not just look like a person from fucking America telling people how to live like Africans. Yeah, but I agree.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
What do you think you can do to return to your African hood? What I mean by this is like to cleanse your mind of this European parasite we all have, and to purify your thoughts and to behave more African, think more African.
I think for me, one, it's like actually conceptualizing what it means to think more African and to be more African. And then I think another part of it is just being much more intentional about how I speak, what I think, and like when I think certain things, be able to understand where it's coming from, if it's rooted in the Asili, the European Asili, being able to critique that. Reading books like this is really helpful. Also learning another a language that is of my ancestors is probably the best tool to yeah, I think, and I think too, another part of that, like being a parent, is like not in the way that I raise Z, also being much more mindful of putting things into this context, so that she doesn't have to grow up and unlearn things that I also had to unlearn. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.